I call this meeting of the Lee County Board of Commissioners to order. Commissioner Womack will deliver the invocation, and please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Madam Chair, is in keeping with my desire to want to quote from our founding fathers, I would like to open with the invocation from Thomas Jefferson, our third president, written on March the 4th, 1801. Please bow with me. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable ministry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with thy spirit of wisdom those whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble suffer not our trust in thee to fail, all of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any additional agenda items?
Madam Chair, I need to add a budget amendment, which I'd like to put under the manager's report. It's a budget amendment to cover year-end, make sure we're balanced in all our departments. I'll hand that out at that time.
Madam Chair, I'd like to know if we've gotten a response from the city regarding the animal control request for funding.
Not anything formal at this point. We're still talking.
It's going to be a part of our agenda, our budget. I'll deal with it.
Okay. Some suggested agenda changes, and I've talked to Mr. Hayes. He had requested under old business, Temple Theater consider funding, and he's agreed to pull that out, and we'll include it in with the budget ordinance discussions. And he's agreeable to that. Are there any other changes to the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Now I need a motion. Do any of the commissioners have any questions on any of the items in the consent agenda? I need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Consent agenda passes. Comments. We've had 8 people sign up for public comments, and I'll just remind you of the ground rules. Everybody is limited to 3 minutes. Mr. Hoyle will be the timekeeper, and please limit your remarks to issues or policies. This is not the venue to have personal attacks on any one person, whether they're on this board or any other board or any individual. So just concerns about issues or processes that come before this board. And when you come up, please state your name and your address. Mr. Ed Underwood.
I'll try to keep it in 1 minute. Ed Underwood, 3309 Westcott Circle, Sanford. I just wanted to give a couple of off-the-cuff encouragements to our elected officials and so forth. With regard to the spending of the taxpayers' money, I would encourage everybody to be very careful about that, be responsible about it, and try not to spend, what we don't have. We personally are careful about that, and I think we all do not spend beyond what's in our pocket personally. Probably, I think that's the case. And one of the big things that have been predominant lately have been the school issues. And I've been thinking about the Lee County schools. I've been involved in those things back 50-some years ago, and I'm sure some of you have too. And we had a different type of organization. We had one principal there, Malcolm McLeod. He had one superintendent. We had a bunch of principals under him, one at each school, a few people that worked around the schools. We had one teacher in each classroom for 30 to 35 students or something like that, and the instruction was very well. We came out of there with a very, very adequate, clear education. And I was thinking of, several of our students went to NC State University. Some of them went to other state universities and other places. But I know of one at State, and he was so prepared from the Lee County schools here that he took 21 semester hours for all 8 semesters that he was there, and still had a good time while he was there at school. And then he qualified to win a full fellowship to go to Yale for graduate studies. This is the way our schools were done back then, with far less central office staff and overhead and all these type of expenditures that we have now. So this is just one little quick point that I wanted to make, and hopefully people would be very considerate when we're spending money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Underwood. Martha Underwood.
My name's Martha Underwood. I live at 3309 Westcott Circle, Sanford. I think it's time to take a step back and look at the big picture. I'm for a great educational system, but how do we define a well-educated student? Much has been said about being cutting edge and a state leader in using technology. Is that what it makes for a teen to be employable? To be an ethical, productive, and well-adjusted citizen? As a retired teacher, I realize that children cannot learn without discipline, both self-discipline and classroom discipline. Parents must parent as well as teachers teach. Standards are a good thing. Attention span and behavior are prerequisite in all areas of life. Whether an outfielder in baseball, using power tools, or a student learning to drive, multitasking does not work in many areas of life. A long attention span really helps. Parents and schools need to teach their children age-appropriate things, which are foundational to advancing. For example, memorizing spelling words and math facts are important to develop mental discipline of attention span and perseverance, as well as subject content. Children need to learn to print with good penmanship, then write cursively, because fine motor skill development is essential in the elementary years. Later in life, their employers will bless them for writing telephone messages legibly, and their spouses will savor reading handwritten love notes. Children need human being interactions with adults and children. How else will they incubate the interpersonal skills of pleasant conversation, giving encouragement, resolving conflicts? Every child needs opportunities to learn to lead and also to serve others, to learn respect for those different from themselves, to learn to listen attentively to multiple viewpoints and draw conclusions independently. Good posture, a handshake, appropriate dress and manners are a must in life. Parents should teach these things while schools reinforce them. Maturity includes accepting personal responsibility for one's actions. It means learning to meet deadlines and giving 8 hours work for 8 hours pay. Honesty and trustworthiness are mandatory. Yes, education means learning content and being able to logically examine facts and draw conclusions, to synthesize new applications of tested principles, and much more. Are we educating our children to leave Lee County after college because we do not have attractive jobs and lifestyle that compels them to return? And what about the kids that are not gifted academic types? Do we condemn them to a life of feeling inferior because someone else decreed college is the only right way? I sat through many of the budget reviews by county departments and am very impressed with the efficiencies and the warm-hearted sacrifices they are making. These are tough economic times. May the schools equally share in the fiscal sacrifices. May God bless you as you realistically provide for all our citizens what we taxpayers can afford. Please, no new taxes.
Connie Oldham?
Madam Chairman, Commissioners, I just wanted to come and introduce myself. I'm Donnie Odom, 2412 Brookwood Trail in Sanford. I'm the incoming chairman of the EDC board, and I wanted to tell you that I appreciate the past support of the EDC board and look forward to working with you guys going forward, and just reiterate our pledge to do everything possible to increase the employment and tax base in Lee County, and that I promise that we're going to have some ideas coming forward to make sure that we're as compliant to everyone's needs and wants as we can be. There's some things that I want to do as incoming chairman, that to work closer with the three supporting bodies, and we'll proceed with that in the future. But thank you for the past support, and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Keith Clark?
Keith Clark, 212 Acorn Drive, Raleigh. I would like to say first that I am not one of those who would like to educate our students the way they were educated 50 years ago. We are today in a global economy, and I believe that I want to commend the Board of Education for it has conducted the most transparent and publicly involved budget process that I have ever seen. They have held countless meetings. All of the information is available on their website, and all of those meetings, public meetings, as well as public hearings that previously have demonstrated strong public support for the schools. There are many reasons that I don't know of anyone who's totally pleased with education. But I do know that those who would like to take the computers out and replace them with chalkboards have their head in the sand in regard to where we are with global competition. And I believe that we're at a crossroads. We're either going to continue to move forward, or we're going to move to the back of the pack. Something was said about people moving back here. We do need to have jobs. One way to have jobs here is to have a first-class educational system that will attract people to start their businesses here. I hope you will consider that, and consider the tremendous public input that has gone into this. I would also like to add that those candidates who may have run as part of the Tea Party movement, I look forward to each of them having their public sessions with the public, so that the time will come that they have to answer questions from the public, and can afford that accountability, which is so much a part of the Tea Party movement.
Sheila Barber?
Hello again. It's nice to be in front of you. Sheila Barber. I live at 232 Palace Drive. Most of you commissioners know how I feel about this whole budget process that has gone down. And I thank you for letting me speak about it tonight. I'm very disappointed in it. I believe that we have, it's been politicized to the max. And just to piggyback on what Mr. Clark said, this conservative here does not want to take our schools back. However, you know, glow in the dark chalk might help our science, I don't know. But anyway, we do not want the chalks in the classroom. It's kind of perplexing to me that almost $8 million was asked for this budget to begin with, and if it had not been met, our school sports was going to be cut, that we would have draconian cuts in all other places and children would suffer. Okay, that's been in the paper. We're now at $660,000, and we can suddenly rehire some of the teachers who were let go and provide much transportation services. Commissioners, I'm not a mathematician, but my trustee TI 86 calculator tells me that's about $6 million that may not have been needed. And that being said, I'm going to reiterate my request that I made a couple months ago for an audit. I believe, you know, money is tight, so let's start with the school outside performance audit with the school system. I don't believe with all my heart that I am the only one who believes that this is needed. We've seen the actions of both boards. We've seen the comments from the public. And I, for one, cannot get all the answers I want from the Board of Education or from others. One of them, you know, question I've asked repeatedly over the last few days was, why are we going to shut down? It's a rumor going on. I'd like to have an answer. But that being said, we need accountability from all of the boards. And we really want true transparency from all your boards. And we want you to work together for the good of the community and economic development. So hence, I'm going to ask again for an audit request. And here's two examples why. In 2009, Duplin County conducted an outside audit of the school systems. It showed that over 5 years, they could save $14.9 million. In 2006, Beaufort County Schools was audited and found that they could save $6.1 million of taxpayer dollars. That's a lot of money. And I see no reason why this idea would be opposed by anyone because, you know, Mr. Moss, our superintendent, was at Beaufort County what happened. He could tell us the experience about it. And so I believe that all parties can see it's a benefit to the taxpayers. And it is a very good means of ensuring the public that we can begin to trust our government to spend our money wisely. Let me be clear. Conservatives, like me, we've stood for keeping our teachers in the classroom. We do not want, nor have we, any of us said we want to get rid of public schools. We want to send them backwards. We want to be the best there is. We want Lee County to be, you know, the #1 in the state. But we also need accountability. We also need to know that our taxpayer dollars are being spent wisely. No North Carolina citizen should ever be denied an education. Basically, education is a right in the North Carolina Constitution. Thank you.
Charles Staley.
Good evening. I'm Charles Staley. I live at 3117 Hickory Hill Drive, Sanford, North Carolina. I agree with her. We need an audit. That wasn't what I was going to say. What I was going to say is this. I did a Freedom of Information request to bring everyone up to date why I have spoken against some of the items that the school board funds. Let me throw this out. I did a Freedom of Information request, simple request. What does the superintendent and the people in the central office make? What's their salary? What's their income? Simple request. Okay, I got back the state salaries. This is what they're paid. Jeff Moss makes $121,000, and you know I had the salaries for all the other people. Great. I started showing that around, and then someone said, well, you know, that doesn't include the supplement. Well, I asked for what they were making. That doesn't include supplement. Why, last year, Mr. Moss made $164,000. I already did a Freedom of Information request. Surely I wouldn't be given incorrect information. Well, I do another Freedom of Information request for the line item budget. And sure enough, that was when I found out that Mr. Moss made $194,000, I think it was, $412. Okay, well, what's the difference between those two numbers? And when I saw that, I started looking, okay, well, maybe, I'm not going to say anybody lied. I'm just going to say maybe there was misinformation or, you know, somebody made a mistake, didn't understand when I said, what are they making? maybe that didn't include everything. So, I'm not going into that. But what I am saying is, I agree, we need an audit of the entire county, not just the school system. Let's do a performance audit of every agency in the county and see what we need. I'm all for teachers. Believe me, I'm all for teachers. I'm a product of the public education system. I went to school, we had one principal, 1st through 8th grade, one principal for the entire school. One teacher, 30, 35 kids for the classroom. Okay, I know things are changed, kids aren't quite behaving like they used to, but still, come on, let's get realistic about this and look and see what we need. And let's look aside from all that misinformation that's coming at us. I know you guys were dumped with a bunch of information, but look through there. And as Miss Barber said, that extra money all of a sudden shrunk awful fast, and they're happy with $600,000. Do they even need that? After all, they were able to pay $4.5 million last year for a bunch of laptops out of the money they got last year. And now they're asking for more money this year. Take a look at that. Take a look at all the departments, not just the school system. I'm calling for you to look at everybody's budget and see what they need. Thank you.
Lloyd Jennings?
Good afternoon. I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a gentleman that's been on this board a long time, and he's seen these budgets come through here a lot. And I've also seen, very much aware and seen him question the budgets, especially from the school system. The school system has a very convoluted accounting system to begin with, very convoluted. Also has a convoluted budget system. I would simply urge you to do this. You've already done so with the other departments in the county. You've made a thorough review of things, everything that they're spending. And I would urge you to consider doing so with the school budget. It needs to be done. We don't need to cut classroom personnel in the school system. We do not need to. What we need to do is educate children in the classroom. That's where the education is and will always be. So I urge you just to consider all that, and please do the right thing, and I'm sure you will. All of you are very honorable people. I know all of you. But I urge you to do that for every citizen. Thank you.
Frank Del Palazzo?
Frank Del Palazzo, 425 Rolling Hill Road, Sanford. I'm here strongly urge you, dear lady and gentlemen, to do something that will have a dramatic effect on the efficacy of our government and also have a dramatic effect on our taxes. And I was not aware that Ms. Barber was going to speak about this. But this is something I've thought for a long time, and that is that we must have a performance audit done. I feel so strongly about it that if our budget is such that we can't, someone says we don't have enough money to do it, I'd be willing to entertain a special assessment. We can't continue on the path that we are. And the path that we are is doling out money and people doing whatever they want with it. The Board of Education has evidenced in their actions obfuscation, deviance, arrogance, possibly even outright untruths. And it seems like every time I turn around, there's something else that happens. So I urge you, I want you to know that the taxpayers, if this is laid before them, will absolutely agree. We've got to have something that will rein in. We gotta know where our money's going. And the second thing I want to bring up to you and urge is that we defund our EDC. I feel that the EDC is something that, quite frankly, government shouldn't do. They act as advocates for tax money. It's outside of the system, but then when we have an EDC here in Lee County that supports an outside Canadian company to come in and at the deference of a long-standing Lee County organization, something screwy. And I feel that, as the previous gentleman, Mr. Jennings, said, I feel that you all have our best interest at heart. Everyone has a different position, but this has nothing to do with positions. If your son or daughter kept coming to you and saying, "Dad, I need money. Dad, I need money. Dad, I need money," eventually you're going to stop and say, "What in the world are you doing with it?" And that's all I'm suggesting. We got to find out what in the world they're doing with it. And for any government body to go this long without some kind of audit is just, it begs the question. It invites the kinds of problems that we're facing now. So, and as someone said, I remember that in Beaufort County, with the cost of about $100,000 or $200,000, the taxpayers were given over $6 million in savings. You can't deny that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Del Palazzo? Okay, old business. First one is appointment to the Central Carolina Community College Civic Center Study Committee. We'd received a request from Ed Garrison, who's chairman of that, and Commissioner Reeves has agreed to serve on that. Has that changed in the last 10 minutes, Commissioner Reeves?
I'll let you know if I see the meeting agenda. No, it hasn't.
Okay. And so is this board okay with that appointment, or do I need?
Move he be appointed.
Motion?
Let me say this, if you decide to back out, I know Mr. Hayes volunteered to do that.
Okay.
So we got.
I'll make a note.
So we've got a motion for Mr. Reeves. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And those opposed say nay. And Commissioner Hayes, you'll be the alternate on that. Okay. Next on the list is, for old business, is discussion of alternate redistricting plans. Mr. Talbert, Mr. Clausitz, and Mr. Hoyle.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Mr. Kravitz and myself will be presenting to you today alternate plans for redistricting. As a review of what has been done previously, this board had reported to it that the 2010 census numbers showed that there would be an impermissible deviation in the populations between District 1 and District 4, was it, John? Yes. District 4. The rule of thumb used by the U.S. DOJ and the courts in determining whether the one person, one rule or equal protection clause has been met is that in any two districts for the same office, there can be no more than 10% deviation from an ideal population. And the ideal population is simply taken by taking the whole county population and dividing it by the number of districts involved here, and then looking at whether there is an impermissible deviation. We reported to you that there was. We received your direction to go forward to develop alternative plans. Reminder again, in doing so, the first goal is to make the populations as close as possible and no greater than 10%. We also must keep in mind that redistricting law as well as court cases require us to move as few lines as possible, keeping the districts compact to the extent possible, keeping them along existing electoral lines or natural boundaries. We're charged with protecting incumbents. That is, that they remain in their district. You don't draw a line so that an incumbent is moved into another district. We also are charged with protecting any existing minority district. Actually, it's called a majority minority district, meaning that in our case, District 1, Mr. Reeves' district, is a minority district. The goal there is to be sure that African Americans and other minorities can elect a candidate of their choice. So with those parameters, what Don has been able to do with his census data loaded onto a special program is to pull these lines to first try to adjust for population, but almost simultaneously keep in mind that we are trying to preserve the minority district 1. We have, in addition to the handouts we provided you showing you the alternative plans, a PowerPoint which gives you snapshots of what that program produces in the way of a visual display of the areas and their concentration of minority members. So you could see where we have in different plans pulled blocks of population in order to maintain the minority ratio in District 1 while at the same time increasing its population. The first chart simply shows what the current commissioner boundaries are and the statistical information related to the important factors that we must consider. The top line, the total. Well, all right, go ahead up there. I'll let Don pick up here and then I'll join back in. He's familiar with this data.
The three most important numbers that we're going to look at in each of these plans is the first is the total population deviation. These numbers here that you see are our current district lines with the 2010 census data in them. You can see that first off, we're over 23% deviation. So right there, we know that we need to redistrict because we can have no more than 10% deviation.
And that is looking at District 1 at 12.4 compared minus 12.4.
Right.
That's below the ideal population of 14,467, while District 4 has 11.21% greater population than the ideal population.
So our challenge is not only to make this within the 10% deviation, but move enough people from District 4 into District 1 and still keep it a majority-minority district. All right.
And that figure for blacks in District 1 currently with these census numbers would be 41.47. And then minority, which would include blacks, Spanish, and the other non-white population is 66.17%.
Right. Let's look at this a little bit too. We're going to have the total white population percentage, black, American Indian, Asian, Hawaiian, and other. You'll see that we have a line here because our Hispanic population is not counted actually as a race in our census data, but it is weighted heavily with census numbers and DOJ because in question 8 of the census they ask, are you Hispanic or not? And then in question 9 they ask what your race is. So they're holding it high, and we're going to show those numbers each time because it's going to make a difference on how close we are than in what DOJ is going to look at on our total populations. So let's take a look then at our current district boundaries. This is what it looks like. When we show on here the district boundaries and actually what you see on the walls, we're actually going to zoom in because nothing changes in these outer areas here. It's all going to be changing right around District 1. We're also going to have the current district line is going to be outlined in each district so that you can see what those changes are going to make. Our first district, Plan A, again, our most important numbers here, we're looking at a 2.8% difference or deviation in the plans. Our total black population in District 1 is 41.04%, and our total minority is 63.94%. So when we look at this, I don't have anything else highlighted over here because, again, the most important numbers are District 1, where we need to maintain our majority-minority status. And in here, we are a true majority-minority because our blacks have a higher percentage than whites or any other breakdown.
The only thing I would point out on this chart and the other charts is if you look at the total population, you can see that they are within a couple of percent of each other and within a few hundred of the ideal population of 14,467.
All right, so let's look at A. This is where our changes are. You can see that we've moved from First Street over to Vance, up Gulf, and down Steel. For 1 is what we've taken away from 4. Number 2 has come down. That's also Vance Street that goes up. And actually, coming down the Cemetery Road and Cherokee Trail, and we're going to show you why we did this. Plan A actually has the best breakdown in numbers because what you're looking at here, the lighter red is 40 to 50% of our, that block is our black population. That red that's a little bit darker is 50 to 75%, and then the darkest is a 75 to 100% of that block is black population. And I'm going to go back here. Notice that right down here, we have some of those high concentration of blacks, but this block, actually it has the school district and the old airport, and it actually isn't contiguous over here. It actually connects to 4, so you would have to bring in another census block to bring it up. Anyway, we're looking at, you only got 3 houses in this district. The same way here, you only got, I think, about 12 residential units, but you have to pull in this whole census area here because that's actually one census block that goes all the way around and it pulls up about another 120 houses. So it just brings down the total percentage of population.
Just said differently, if we pull those areas in, you get a high concentration of minority, but you have to pull in other area that dilutes those numbers and it would bring down the percentage of minority population in that proposed plan.
Correct. So Plan A follows where we are picking up all of the high concentrations of our black population and really disregarding the other lines except where we need to keep those. Plan B is still within our population deviation. Plan B, though, we have created a more condensed version, compact. You can see that we go up to 421. We bring it back to Gulf Street here. We still keep this high concentration. We take away these little areas here because there's only a couple houses here and a couple houses here. So what we wanted to do was keep that along the current district lines. And if we go back, you can see that it only changes it to 40.11% of our black population in that district, where in Plan A, it was less than a percentage higher. Our total minority difference is about 0.5% than what it was in Plan A. So that's Plan B. Plan C, we're 4.47% deviation. We're a little bit higher in our black population from Plan B, but we're still less than 1% lower than Plan A. Our total minority is still about 0.5% different. And what we did here is we tried to make those boundaries as close to the old boundaries as we could, still keeping in those minority districts that are right on the edge. You can see that this boundary here really doesn't match the old district, and that's because in this area, the census blocks don't match what they did 10 years ago. So in this area, it actually is as close to that old district line as we could have. That was Plan C. Plan D, we decided to get as close as we possibly could on the population deviation. So we're less than a 1% deviation between districts 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're still less than 1% difference than we were for our highest population, or highest concentration of our black population from district or Plan A, and again, less than 0.5% difference in our total minority concentration from our Plan A. So, in all of the plans we have, our total black population for the county is close to 50% of that population is in District 1. So even though our total black population in the county is about 20%, again, about half of those are in District 1 for each of those plans that we're showing you.
We've supplemented your original agenda package with a page that puts all of these plans for all of the data for plans A, B, and C together, so it's easy for you to pick up the differences.
Right, so you can just go right down and see what those important numbers are and how close they are from the others. And we also have included a map that has all the plans together so you can see where those changes actually are. So, what we would actually like for you to do tonight is to pick one or two of these plans that we can advertise for a public hearing that we will have on July 18th.
And let me talk a little bit further to that point. Under the federal law, there is no absolute requirement to have a public hearing. But since we are in the Section 5 group of counties where we have to get pre-clearance from USDOJ, they want to have us show that we have gotten as much public input, public comment on the proposed plans as possible. So I strongly urge you, even though it's not required, to have a public hearing. As Don said, you can pick one map and say, that's what we want to do, give us your comment on it. You can pick 2 or 3 or all 4 if you want. But we have also in your package a proposed timeline to get this to USDOJ for their pre-clearance review, and the July 18th date fits within that timeline. So we could either have a public hearing at a regular commissioners meeting, which July 18th is, or we could have a public hearing at some date prior to that. But we would like to get the commissioners' approval on a plan to submit to Justice for its pre-clearance in July.
What's the pleasure of this board?
Well, can we ask a couple questions first? One, all 4 of these you believe are compliant with USDOJ? I mean, absolutely
Certainly.
Compliant with no issues, right?
Yes.
Well, the only issue is that the total percentage of African Americans, blacks, in District 1 will be less than it was during the 2000 census. USDOJ doesn't want any plan approved or put into effect that will have a retrogressive effect on the ability of African Americans and other minorities to elect a candidate of their choice. So they may look at the smaller percentage of blacks, but the facts are that blacks have been leaving that area and Hispanics have been replacing them. So our minority percentage, that is blacks and the other minorities, more specifically Hispanics, have kept the overall minority rate high. So we think it will survive justice review. They may question us on the lowering of the black population, but we have an explanation of that, both practical and statistical.
Okay, on the two, on C and D, the D plan has the closest as far as deviation goes, right?
Yes, sir.
And closeness and deviation from what?
Population.
From population.
And the Plan C still retains within 0.4% of the black population that the original one. Wasn't it 0.8?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But it has a greater deviation in a couple of the districts.
That's true, but DOJ
I mean, it's
gives us
within the
leeway.
guidelines.
We are within that 10%, and as long as we are within that 10%, that's not something that,
Right, we should
That's
probably
gonna
be
factor.
looking more at minority percentage and black percentage.
Okay.
Say that again.
Looking for
The
minority.
deviation in population is not the most important factor during a US DOJ pre-clearance review. As long as we are within 10%, it is presumed to be constitutional under the Equal Protection Clause. So that's the standard. Anything under 10%, DOJ will take out the pen and check the block and we're in good
Okay, so the
shape.
total minority between D and our current one now is what?
let's see, I'm trying to think what our
Because I don't think this one
original
has a
is.
current on it.
It's right here. First page.
Is our total minority is 65.17% in what it is right now with the 2010 census number. But we can't keep that because we're 23% in our total population deviation. So we show that because of that deviation, that when we're looking at that 23% with
I
the
just
numbers
didn't-
that we have now.
Yeah, I just didn't have the current one here on this
It's on
sheet.
page,
so-
yes, on page 7.
Okay, but that's okay. You gave me what I needed, so.
Madam Chair, I'm gonna move that we accept Plan A as the primary, Plan B as the secondary.
Okay.
I agree, that's good. That's good.
Motion has been made to accept Plan A as the primary, Plan D, as in dog, for the secondary. Is there any further discussion?
Did you say B or D?
D.
Alpha Delta.
Is that going to set a public hearing for the 18th, or is that part of the motion?
Is that part of
That was automatic. We already agreed that we do that.
He didn't explain why, but I thought the same thing intuitively because they seem to be, one represents a very close fit to the population count, and the other one represents a closer fit to the minority count.
The
And I
best
think
we can do.
Yeah, and I think those give you two different considerations to look at. That's good.
Is there any further discussion? And so this motion does include A as a primary, D as the secondary, and the public hearing set scheduled for July 18th. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your hard work. Okay, item,
Madam Chair.
yes.
Well, make sure that these type of maps are in the library.
Right, they will, in our advertisement, we will
All right.
state where those are located.
Actually, if you could get maps with street names on them so we could,
Those
so
two.
they could tell where
Like
the
the ones back
big
there.
ones, okay.
Yeah.
And typically, we put it at the library, the clerk's office. Maybe we can post it at the courthouse. Yeah, board of elections.
That's a good.
In here at the county.
But you only need A and D now, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Lisa, can you turn the lights back on?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, item C under old business is to consider the revised Lee County Animal Ordinance, Control Ordinance. And let me just suggest something. I think Mr. Kane is going to present the changes, but I also, to shorten up this meeting, would entertain a motion after that to table any action on this until our July 18th meeting. So I guess we'll handle that after we get his presentation on the changes. So just keep that in mind. Heath, your show. Do we need to turn the lights out again? Do you have a PowerPoint? No. Okay.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Sorry about the voice. It's been this way for a few months now. It's not nervousness, but that tends to happen at times. Lee County Board of Health was tasked with revising the Animal Services Ordinance by the Board of Commissioners back in, I think it was December. And we've done that. The changes have been instituted. We have introduced 2 possible tethering alternatives. Attended tethering, which allows a person to tether their animal provided they're out with the animal and can see the animal, or no tethering whatsoever in Lee County. That is part of the addendum that you have in your packet. The other things we have addressed. Let me make sure I get it clear. I apologize. We have addressed the impoundment of an animal as part of that as well. The impoundment, as far as we have asked that any person that has an animal that's missing or has an animal that's at large, and that the shelter actually picks the animal up, we're asking for a call within 3 days to get that information to the shelter to see if their animal's been picked up. Their second impoundment will prevent any kind of altering of that animal to occur. So that is part of the changes as well. Are there any other changes I'm not sure of that we've addressed?
There was the comment that plastic barrels should not be used as shelters for animals. So the Board of Health deleted plastic barrels as an approved shelter for dogs. And the only other thing mentioned there was the size of pens. We heard at the public hearings some people, primarily breeders or hunters, indicating that at times they needed to restrain their animals, especially breeding animals, in smaller pens. So the Board of Health addressed that by allowing for a temporary exemption of a smaller pen, provided it was approved by an animal services officer, and the exemption would only be allowed 30 days every 6 months. So those were the public comments that were addressed by the board and changes made in the order.
That is the revised ordinance that you have in front of you now. So,
Is this ordinance, the revised proposed ordinance, available on our website for the public to take a look at?
it has not been posted as of this evening.
Okay. Could we somehow get that posted there? Okay. Okay. I'm sure there are some.
It was posted as part of the agenda package, but it's not a separate
attachment?
That's right.
Okay. It's the pleasure of the board, but to get through our agenda tonight, I would entertain a motion to table any action on this proposed ordinance until July 18th. That would also give the general public time to take a look at this on the website. So what's the pleasure of the board?
Madam Chair, I move that we table this, any action on this until the July 18th meeting.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair, before you take a vote on that, the Board of Health did present to you its recommendation that there be the attended tethering, which allows tethering of an animal, but requires the owner or representative of the owner to be outside and in eyesight of the animal. The Board of Health also discussed, and we have presented to you for your consideration, a no tethering policy, prohibiting tethering altogether. If you want to wait until the next meeting to make your decision on that, we can post both of the alternative tethering rules on the web and go from there. That's an important factor.
Dale, does this require 2 readings?
Yes, yes and no. An ordinance may be passed upon a single reading upon unanimous vote of the commissioners present. If it is a favorable vote, but not unanimous, then there must be a second reading and a second meeting where it also must receive a favorable majority vote before it can be placed into effect.
Now, let me clarify. You say that's if it gets a unanimous vote. That's not as written necessarily, right? So in other words, if we made some modifications as part of our discussion and then we voted it unanimously,
Yes.
then it would pass?
Yes.
One time. Okay.
So, does this doesn't change our motion any, does it? And I would assume that this being posted on the website, we see editing, comments here, anything that changed from the previous one, like underscore and whatever, that
Yes, that will appear in red,
on the website so people can see what the proposed.
underlined, strike through.
Okay, we have a motion to table any action on this until July.
Madam Chair, we have one other question.
For individuals who want to make comment regarding the change, will they make them to the health board or to this board? I'd recommend the health board.
My position on this is that it's now before you as a governing body.
It's our decision. You're talking about on the tethering.
Yeah, but who do you want to be the caretaker?
Anything, right?
Yeah, who do you want to be the caretaker of these, of the recipient of these comments and all that? You're not going to have 7 of
I'll
us.
take them.
Okay, all right.
So maybe some kind of a comment on there that if they have any comments, please send them to Mr. Compton and put his email link on there or something.
Okay.
All right, so we need to take action, or to take a vote on the motion to table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Okay, next item on the agenda is to consider creation of 2 fire protection and rescue service districts in the Cape Fear Fire Protection District. Mr. Talbert, you're up again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel confident that no real review of this matter needs to be given to you. You're all familiar with the issue. Cape Fear's got a problem with its fire insurance rating that we have found a resolution to, and that is having the city provide to a defined area, not just the Clearwater Forest residential area, but a wider area, fire protection services, and then the remainder of what was Cape Fear Rural Fire Protection District would become itself another fire service.
Just to save time,
Yes.
I think we've had the public hearing on it.
Yes, sir.
We've had the presentation here. I just had one question for
Yes,
you.
sir.
On the amounts, it's still listing Cape Fear as .87, shouldn't that be .92?
On the proposed resolution?
Yes.
What are you speaking of, sir?
And that was one of my questions on the budget ordinance also, where we approved the
Yes,
fire
yes.
district rates.
This is a little convoluted because the Fire Commission has already submitted its budget. I believe Ms. Mentor has created an alternative budget should this resolution pass, and we'll substitute whatever rate the new budget turns out to be. Is
That's
that
what I
right?
was looking at, because we talked about, you know, it increasing with Cape Fear Park.
Right. And you have there the proposed interlocal agreement with Sanford, and I understand their Law and Finance Committee gave that consensus approval at its meeting last Wednesday or Thursday, and they will be able to sign the interlocal agreement tomorrow if this board approves it and signs it today or tomorrow.
Okay. Those of us who attended the public hearing heard from both the Cape Fear Fire District and from the Clearwater, and this was pretty much unanimous, that, you know, these service districts should be created. And so all we need from this board is the approval to establish these two service districts within the Cape Fear Fire District.
So moved.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I would like to hear, I know Commissioner Parks has followed this extremely closely, and I have not had the pleasure of hearing his after-action review of that. Would you just give us a brief analysis of this thing? Are you satisfied with it now?
Yeah, I am. My concern is the burden that would be shifted from Clearwater over to Cape Fear residents. We're talking 430 homes versus 3,400 homes. But the impact was so minimal, and those that were at the hearing actually spoke for the change because they wanted the folks in Clearwater. Number one, they can't get insurance. They're rated 10, so they can't get insurance for their homes. Secondly, the amount of time, even as good as Cape Fear is, the amount of time to get there was unacceptable. So, safety reason and the fact that they would be insured, I lost all of my objections.
Okay.
Motion's on the table. All those in favor of establishing these two service districts, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. And John, one of the things that you and I had discussed was, we heard several of those people from Clearwater saying they'd just recently gotten notices that they no longer would be covered. And so, and we also learned that it might take 6 months before this happens. So I think you had some ideas on maybe how to speed this up some, or?
Well, I think, you know, we just need to go ahead and try to appear right before the Secretary of the Department of Insurance and bring up the topic and see if he can try to push things along on this, because this is a pretty serious matter. Also, I think we probably, just for procedural purposes, need to get another motion that approves the interlocal agreement with the City of Sanford to provide the fire protection. It really wasn't part of the first motion. The first motion really established the district, but I think to cover ourselves there, we need to, in a second motion here, to approve the interlocal agreement with the City of Sanford for fire protection.
And have you and our attorney looked at the interlocal agreement?
Yeah, it's on page 122. The only issue, I don't know that we really need to make a big issue about it. The City of Sanford is requesting payment at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we're giving them payment before we collect any taxes in the district. So, I mean, that's the only thing I really see as a concern. But
Premature.
It is a little bit premature, but
whatever the pleasure of the board is.
What's the recommendation of the county manager? That that be modified?
I would like to see it modified to quarterly payments.
I think that makes a lot of sense. That's the way
People
to do
pay it
business.
on July 1st, October 1st, January 1st, and April 1st, like we do every other, smaller contract. So.
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the interlocal agreement with that adjustment, and that we negotiate that, empower the county manager to negotiate that agreement with the city. Payment with the city, yeah.
okay. Is there any discussion? Motion has been made. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Before we move on, Madam Chair, in regards to getting before the Secretary of Insurance, I would ask that the board consider sending our delegation a request to intervene and try and get an immediate action on the coverage for these families.
Okay. That's a good idea.
That's a motion if you need.
I think I might know who the representative is and whatever, so, okay. I think that's a great idea. And so, John, can you have Gaynell draft letters to our two state representatives?
She's going to do it.
Okay. Item E under old business, consider contract with Mosley Architects for design of courthouse basement renovation project. Mr. Crumpton.
Yes, ma'am. In the packet, you have an addendum to the existing contract that we have with Mosley Architects. After talking with Dan Mace, the head architect that works with us, we decided to do the amendment because we already had a contract with them for services at the jail, and it's quite lengthy. Now it's already been approved by the board, so we decided to do the amendment. The amendment for $74,000 will cover the design, the bidding, and construction observation by them. It represents less than 7% of the total contract, which is typical in these type of arrangements. So when he gave me that price, I felt that it was reasonable and recommending approval so that we can go ahead and begin.
This also includes the piece for the control area of the jail that we added at last.
Yes, ma'am.
meeting. Okay. What's the pleasure of the board here? Okay. Motion has been made to approve the contract addendum with Mosley. Is there any further discussion?
I have just one question for the county manager, and that is that, is there any chance or a likelihood that if we, instead of going with Mosley, that we competed that project, what would be the impact? Or is there any chance that we could do it cheaper? And
Well, it would be, yeah, there would be a delay since we're in a time-sensitive environment right now to try to get this done. That would be the only real issue, is that we would be pushing the envelope.
On the E911 funds?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
What's the time?
We need to have it completed, what, 12 months from, 10 days from now. So we have 12 months, 10 days to get this finished.
Any further questions or discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion passes. And that takes care of old business. New business. Consider request from Boys and Girls Club and Sanford Housing Authority. Is Mr. Hedrick here?
Madam Chair, thank you for hearing me this evening. Bring to you a request, the Boys and Girls Club with Sanford Housing Authority and Central Carolina Community College got together last year. The Sanford Housing Authority made application to HUD for a $2.4 million facility. Mr. Armstrong, who is in training this evening, or he'll be here with us, he called me in last week, showed me the notice from HUD, 2 weeks ago, the notice indicating that while out of 300 applications, the Sanford application made the top 30, it was still denied by HUD. This was for a facility to replace or to be added over by Gilmore Terrace, which is over on 200 Church Street. But in showing me that letter, he also told me, but we've got good news, we have a second opportunity. HUD has reissued $15 million for these projects, and they have asked that we resubmit the application. And with that, Mr. Armstrong also received what you call a scorecard, had the application broken down into different categories, and on the Housing Authority application, it met all requirements in all the categories except for in one, and that was the community support area. With the three parties, the Housing Authority would own the piece of property there. The community college would have classroom space for HVAC classes, phlebotomy, English as second language, and a couple of other classes that would be conducted there. And in that location, it's easy access for some of the residents who may have issues with transportation. But Boys and Girls Club would have space to conduct programming where we could add, we could probably double the number of children that we serve in our Church Street site. Under the scorecard, the Boys and Girls Club was committing $50,000 for the capital on the project. Sanford Housing Authority, $400,000, again, capital match. And the community college had started out, we wanted to do $1,000 a month for rent, and because it needed to be a 5-year term, neither the community college or the county, for that matter, could commit to that without saying contingent upon approval of next year's budget. So for the grant readers, they looked at it as everything looks good. However, if we build this building, you're only getting $1 a month. May not be able to keep the lights on for that. So I feel like we've been given a second opportunity to exchange a nickel for a dollar in our community. The Boys and Girls Club would like to take the $50,000 commitment for the capital match off and turn that into a 5-year lease agreement with Sanford Housing Authority, so that we would be paying between $833 a month and $1,000 a month, roughly $50,000 over 5 years. Housing Authority would keep their commitment of $400,000 for the capital match. We'd like to ask the county commissioners to consider a $50,000 capital match contingent upon HUD approving the application when it's resubmitted July 14th. Some big picture items that go along with that is, our community between Sanford Housing Authority, Boys and Girls Club, and the county would be investing $500,000. We'd be receiving $1.9 million from the federal government. The stimulation to our economy to build a $2.4 million facility in this town would give some opportunity to local businesses to bid on that. Long term, I've talked with Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Marchant, and I feel like we would have 20 people employed in those positions between Boys and Girls Club and the community college. So what my request is to the county is that they would consider a $50,000 capital investment if HUD approves the application to build the $2.4 million facility to house Boys and Girls Club, CCCC, and Housing Authority.
Mr. Hendrick, I lost you there somewhere. You mentioned a per month amount. How much was that?
Well, at $833 over the 5 years, that would be $50,000. So Boys and Girls Club would be committing the same amount that we're asking the county to commit.
So that's the $50,000 that you're asking us to commit?
Yes.
Not
The reason
upfront $50,000?
Well, no, sir. The upfront $50,000 that I'm asking you to commit is to the capital cost of building the facility. Boys and Girls Club can hold that 5-year lease with the Housing Authority with board approval, and we wouldn't have to put the contingency in there to be sent back to the grant readers that would say contingent upon board approval every month. We'll take care of that $50,000.
The second question then is, how much is the city, are you negotiating with the city for any?
No, sir. We have not.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How do the dollars flow? Our commitment, if you're successful, are we obligating ourselves to 5 years paid to community college?
No, sir. We're changing that up. We're going to make, because of the provisions that would have to be in the lease agreements, they wouldn't score the maximum points. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to rearrange the relationship where the Boys and Girls Club, they're going to be responsible for the lease, and we're going to turn back around and now become part of the capital project and give the $50,000 up front if the HUD grant is approved. So our commitment would be a one-time deal instead of being on the hook for $833 or $1,000 a month for 6 years. I mean for 5 years.
All contingent upon HUD approving.
That's correct.
Would this be a part of the budget that we're looking at for next year? Would you roll that into that budget?
We could, or we could wait until they got approved and then do a budget amendment.
All right, and
You know,
when would you expect to hear, or do you have any idea about that?
No, so Mr. Armstrong had instructed me that we needed to have this decision to him by the 14th of July,
Oh,
so
so
that his
it's-
writers, they've invested nearly $20,000 in the team that's worked on this grant for
Mhm.
about 8 months. So, and we submitted in January, just received word back, 2 weeks ago. So using that, I would say it'd probably take 3 months to get back, 2 months to get back from it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would just offer as an observation that rarely do we get an opportunity to get, a 19-for-1 match on funding. I wish we could build schools like that, where we got a 19-for-1 match on every dollar we invested. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that except in these CDBG grants. And when you get opportunities to do this in an area that has proven itself to be useful to the community and keeping kids off the street and mentoring them properly, I can't imagine why we wouldn't want to do that. The fiscal conservative in me says that these are desperate times, but when you got 90% of the funding or 95% of the funding being provided by the federal government for a facility of this magnitude and a place in a location that's really good, it's very difficult not to want to support a move like this.
It's my understanding this is an area that currently has a lot of drug problems.
It does. That has decreased since we've had the Boys and Girls Club site there because it brought that Gilmore Terrace Community Center to life. And when there's traffic, the folks sometimes steer clear of that. But, Mr. Armstrong and the Housing Authority, everyone has seen the investment they've put into the homes in the different communities. And it looks great. And that's what he's trying to do here. He's asking to become a landlord of a building that'll be used for a community college and a Boys and Girls Club, and to make his community
A better place.
I listed Ms. Underwood's suggestions about a responsible school student. We meet all those with our
That's
Boys and
right.
Girls Club kids. If we can do this, we can double that capacity there at least.
I would move that the county commit a letter of commitment for this project, this grant application.
Motion has been made that the county issue a commitment for the local support of,
Contingent on the approval of HUD.
and, okay, dependent on the approval of HUD of the grant application. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a real concern. Most of these kids are inner city, is that correct?
Any resident of Lee County between the age of 16
I
and 18.
understand that, but are most of them from inner city?
Yes, most, because we have the two sides.
The concern I have is that the city of Sanford's not participating in this. And so we're expecting the whole county to fund what city of Sanford has a problem. So I question why we're not asking the city of Sanford to participate.
Feel mostly due to the direct relationship between the county and the community college, and Boys and Girls Club, the community college, and the Housing Authority are the ones who went to the table in the first grant application and are asked to come back again.
Charlie, I was going to also offer that the city of Sanford are Lee County taxpayers as well. And
I understand that, but
I know, basically you're asking the same people to share doubly if you're asking them to do that. And we're not making any restriction that says that it's going to be county only people or city only people. I think it's local tax dollars either way.
But in addition to that, I know that I don't know what the city's committed early on in the project to aid the housing authority. So I would contend that we do the right thing at this point in time and move forward with the recommendation.
Just a comment on that. I think there's no question about, this serving the whole city. But I think Mr. Parks' sense was, why not invite them to participate, to enjoy the bounty, so to speak, and to, spread the investment around. Not that that would change a good thing that we're talking about, but I think that needs clarification. I think that's what, if I believe you're saying, and, you know, to a reasonable mind, one would say, why doesn't the city get in on this train also? But I would not hold it up. I just think that point needs to be made.
But wouldn't that be something that the housing authority would want to take up?
We don't know that they're not.
And
I
so
don't.
I don't understand why we have it.
Yeah. No, I just asked the question, Robert. I'm not against the
Oh, no,
the proposal. I just wanted to know why they weren't involved, because it seems like a worthwhile project. So it seemed to me like they would be anteing up to helping, to get involved with that.
I purely and simply appreciate the fact that the community college might get an opportunity for the additional space that we need.
Absolutely.
And this would not affect your present home location at all. I mean, this
No,
is
sir.
totally.
You could almost envision. In fact, I have a full packet of that application that I'll leave with Mr. Crumpton if you want to see blueprints and you want to see. Keep in mind, this is the original application that was submitted.
Madam Chair, I call for the question.
Let me say before you do, in support of the community, I heard the comment made about drug in the neighborhood. Drugs all over Lee County and Sanford. They just happen to be reported more frequently in one area over others. So let's not be confused. Don't think you live in some back if you are not.
Okay, motion has been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hedrick. Okay, next item on the agenda is the consideration of the 2011-2012 budget ordinance. And I just want to start with a few comments here. As my colleagues know, this is the most important responsibility and document that we sign every year. And several commissioners have expressed an interest in maybe revisiting some of the items that we passed the other day in our budget work session. So, and Mr. Hayes also wants to revisit the Temple Theater. So what I would like for us to do is an opportunity for individual commissioners, if you have any individual item that you want considered and debated, let's entertain all of those ideas. And I would just suggest that we be succinct and not verbose, and so everybody can have an opportunity to make their points, and we'll do the votes, and majority will win.
Madam Chair.
Just a second.
Madam Chair, I have a list of those changes from last week. I don't know if it would help in the discussion or not, so go ahead and pass
That's
those out.
different than was in our book.
Yes, sir. It's something that I had Lisa Mentor do today, and it just kind of makes it a little bit easier to see the items that were done last week.
Madam Chair, I was just going to, and I appreciate the county manager doing that, I was just going to say that I have one item related to the budget, but that I did not want to incorporate into the budget resolution, if that would be permissible. Okay. I wish to express my dissatisfaction with the ongoing practice of the Lee County School Board in executing contract agreements that commit Lee County taxpayers to the expenditure of local tax dollars beyond the upcoming fiscal year. And this apparently has been an ongoing practice for a long time. Our fiscal policy, unfortunately, does not rule that out, and I had not noticed that before. All those multi-year contracts are for state-recognized positions that are authorized compensation for state or compensation from state or federal authorities, but the state statutes do not require that those contracts obligate local tax dollars. In other words, they're for state-recognized positions. And so I think our fiscal policy, and I'd like to make a motion before this board, that our fiscal policy be adjusted so that it includes language prohibiting the practice of writing contracts or otherwise obligating county tax dollars in any fiscal year beyond the immediate and next upcoming fiscal year, unless the Board of Commissioners has first approved the contract or the commitment for a longer period. And what this would do is it would allow our local taxpayers to understand that their tax dollars 3-4 years hence are not going to be obligated to contracts or obligations beyond the elected period of time that their elected officials are in office. And it would also allow us to be more fiscally disciplined in Lee County, and not just giving a carte blanche to the Board of Education to be obligating our local taxpayers to monies we may not be able to afford in the future.
So you're proposing a
A
change in our
to our fiscal
county's
policy.
fiscal policy.
That's right. That would include language prohibiting the practice of multi-year contracts beyond the next upcoming fiscal year.
I guess, John or Mr. Hoyle, do you see any, is that something we can do?
I don't know.
Well,
Because what you're essentially doing is you're sending a message to the Board of Education that, the local funds that you're providing that become part of their contract, and if you read the contracts, it says their compensation is salary plus supplements.
If applicable.
If applicable. And you're now trying to, regulate whether, ongoing
it's called
contracts.
micro metal.
I'm discussing it from a legal standpoint. So I don't know if you can do that or not. I have to ask Mr. Hoyle whether you can try to regulate that or not.
Well, I'd like to respond, Madam.
Sure.
I think that we should not go down that road unless that it is thoroughly explored and understood. My instinct is that we would be getting into a situation that we should not be in, that we would be indeed micromanaging the school system. I think it would be precedent setting. I'm not sure, as a matter of fact, to be fair, if there is precedent for that. But I personally wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole unless I knew that it had been thoroughly considered by both sides. I am reluctant to go to war with the school board, and I'd like to go on record yet again to say that. And I think this really raises a line and a barrier, if you will, to working cooperatively with the school system. I think it is ill-advised and a mistaken idea, and with all due respect, I could not go along with that. And I would urge all of the commissioners to think long and hard before we go and approve some type of a change in our policy that would effectively have us approving contracts that the school system enters into and for supplements. And I think we can't do it, and I think we should not do it.
Well, I think the first step then is for Mr. Crumpton and Mr. Hoyle to do a little bit of research on this. It wouldn't always just be with the Board of Education. It's any outside agency
It's the entire county. I mean,
that receives funding that would commit to multiple years of maybe dollars that hadn't been appropriated
and
yet.
in fact, I would offer back to Mr. Hayes that I'm not so sure that what the school board is doing is unprecedented. That they're obligating us with their language and their contracts, which we just recently received, that the language in those contracts are obligating our tax dollars without our approval. And I don't know that that's legitimate. I think the School of Government should review those contracts and render an opinion. And I think that our attorney needs to take a look at them. I don't know that we've ever had the privilege of being given school contracts and the language that they routinely use to have them under review and scrutiny here. I think in tough times, we owe it to our taxpayers not to be obligating them to things they can't afford in the future years. And this is not a political statement. This is a fiscally prudent measure that we should take. And I would be glad to table this motion until a subsequent meeting where we've had a time for legal review. But I do not want to see this get swept under the rug and forget about it going forward. I think we owe it to our taxpayers to adjust our fiscal policy if that's permissible.
Okay.
Let's let the county attorney
Okay.
look at it, come back to us with a recommendation.
I'll withdraw the motion for tonight, contingent upon our agreement that we will take it under legal review and bring it back up at the subsequent meeting.
Okay. Mr. Hoyle, I do have a legal question for you. When we go into closed session and, like, for example, we're approving a contract for our county manager and we come out of closed session and we state that we have approved the contract for the county manager. It's my understanding that we attach that contract to the minutes of the meeting, and if we didn't do that, that would not be a legal contract. Is that correct, or? Does that, what I'm saying is, does any employment contract that we approve in closed session, when we come out, if we do not attach that employment contract to the minutes of our meeting, is that a,
Yes, you would.
In other words, it wouldn't have to
can't-
be
You don't
the
approve
complete contract,
contracts or
just the
anything
sub-
like that in closed session. You come out and you make a motion to approve a contract in open session, and you really should either have the terms of the contract as part of the agenda item or as part of the motion, so that it's clearly understood what the terms are.
right? I think everybody knows where I'm coming from on that question. Thank you. I can't hear you. Can you?
I would imagine they have to put the same statement on their contracts that an appropriation's been made.
I don't recall seeing that stipulation in their contracts.
All right, so back to our budget ordinance. Mr. Crumpton has given you the items that we agreed on the other day, and you also have a cap sheet here somewhere.
Madam Chair, I would motion the board to reconsider nonprofit funding for the Temple Theater for 2011-2012, per Mr. Hayes' request, at a level of $6,000, with the stipulation that $2,500 of that funding be deducted from the 2011-2012 expense budget for the commissioners, with the remaining $3,500 being deducted equally from the paychecks of all county commissioners voting in favor of this motion in even increments across all 24 pay periods, with the total amount being deducted equal to $3,500 for the year. Like all other commissioners, I value the Temple Theater and its many contributions to our community, but I do not think it appropriate for our taxpayers to have to finance that organization above what we already have in the budget for nonprofits. If the other commissioners truly believe that our funding for the Temple Theater is vital, then I challenge them to give their own money away to the Temple Theater
Okay,
rather than giving away additional
Let me
funds.
what is your motion? I
My
think you're
motion
getting
is
into.
that- is to take $2,500 out of the county budget, which is for the commissioner's expense account, which would be travel. I think we're going to have about $2,500 left this year on our budget, on what we had for.
Never used it. Didn't even.
Yeah, didn't even use it, that's right. And I think we can take $2,500 there and take the remaining $3,500, and that all commissioners that vote in favor of restoring funding to the Temple Theater, well, it'll come out of their paychecks evenly divided among the number of commissioners that vote in favor.
Madam Chair, I voted for it early, so I'm going to abstain from this vote. Have at it, fellas.
An abstention is counted.
That's right, it's counted as in favor.
I don't care what you count, I'm not voting for it.
Okay.
Mark it down the way you want it.
You're talking about the motion.
Right.
Exactly.
My motion is that everyone that votes in favor of restoring the funding of Temple Theater at $6,000, that $3,500 will be divided equally among us. And I'll be on the record as I'm going to vote for it.
Pay it all
If the motion passes.
I'd like to call I have a counter motion that I was prepared to make. And so Mr. Womack got out ahead of me. I'd like to ask that we vote on Mr. Womack's motion at this time, and yea or nay, and then I'll have a motion to follow if it's still
Okay.
valid.
So motion is on the floor. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
I think the nays
Show of
have.
hands.
Let me see the hands. Ayes?
Say what we.
Nays?
I got lost.
Let's start this over, because I don't
thought
think.
what he was saying was he has an arrangement that those who support his motion would have money extracted from our expense and personal accounts.
If the motion passes, that those that voted in favor would equally divide the remaining $3,500 among our paychecks and pay for
So
it for
that
this
would
year.
be 4 into whatever pass.
Four, if it passed, it would be 4-2 or 5-2, whatever the number.
I understand, but 4 is what takes the pass.
Right.
Yeah, is an amendment in order?
I think we just voted it.
Huh?
I think we just voted it.
Well,
We
but
didn't get a count for the vote, did we?
Want to do it again?
You need to vote again because
All right.
the clerk is saying she cannot see who voted
All
for
right.
the motion and who voted against.
Okay, so all of those in favor of basically having your paycheck
I'm
deducted?
not paying.
That's right. That's, you're
what-
opposed.
whatever
You're
that
opposed.
is.
No, you would be opposed.
Okay.
You would be opposed.
Okay, raise your hand. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah, and only he is doing this.
Come on, what's the help? Who loves the Temple Theater? Come on.
all right, next.
All those opposed?
And I'm gonna take it out of what I pay in taxes at the end of the
All
year.
right.
Madam Close.
Okay, Mr. Hayes.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on here. Mr. Hayes.
Back to the real world. I wanted to make a motion that we approve $6,000 for the Temple Theater, which we ended up negating and not approving at our last budget meeting. And I just wanted to say this again, very briefly. Where have we got my paper? That I think the Temple Theater is a very, very worthy cause and nonprofit. I think it's an engine, an economic engine to our county. It probably is the most attractive entity that place that people from out of the community come to. It's really quite an impressive venue, and it does a lot of great things for our community, and it does a lot of great things for our young people. So, you know, it's not only an economic engine, but it's also an educational tool. And I think if you saw in the newspaper just the other day, Wednesday, June the 15th, it talks about Youth Conservatory going on there this summer, and over 90 youth who are working across the summer to learn the art of acting and dramatic arts. Well, you know, this is very impressive, and it has gone on for years. Obviously, I'm very convinced that the Temple is a very good thing. Their budget is such that they kind of move from year to year. They had to cut back 2 years ago and again last year. And they have a wonderful executive director, creative director in Peggy Taphorn, and a wonderful staff. And it's a real, I'll wait until somebody's cell phone is completed. It's a real fine asset to Lee County to have it. And I was so zealous about this. Admittedly, I was hoping that we would do 12,000 because we were speaking the other day of being rather generous to the nonprofits, and there was a lot of talk and consideration. But I could see and can see now that that's probably not in the cards. But I think $6,000 is reasonable, and I think with the city, I believe it's committed $20,000 to it. And I know they're going to start. They're presently trying to raise money. They're really searching for how to continue to move forward and have a first-rate production program and series of presentations this coming year. So. To sum up, 6,000 is my motion, and I'd like to urge you to, all of you, to vote for that. I think it would be a very good sign and support for the Board of Commissioners.
Motion has been made to amend the proposed budget ordinance by adding appropriation to Temple Theater in the amount of $6,000. Is that the essence of your motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question.
Is there any?
What was the request? How much was the original request?
12.
And you recommended 6,000, right?
Yes, sir.
What was the vote on that 6,000?
It was 4-3 against. Madam Chair, I would like to remind this board that this will now be the fourth time that we voted on funding for the Temple Theater, and I love the Temple Theater, don't get me wrong. I think it's great. I would be glad to pay increased ticket prices to keep going to the shows that I go to. I will even offer my time to help run a fundraiser for the Temple Theater this year. I will commit at least a day or two of my time to help run a fundraiser for them to raise $6,000, and we might raise well over that. But I am adamantly opposed to giving money away to an organization that is not desperate for cash in a time where our taxpayers are being asked to share that burden when our commissioners are not willing to take it out of their pay. Okay, I just think that it's the wrong thing to do, and I think for the fourth time we should vote it down.
Is there any further discussion?
Has anyone from Temple Theater been forwarded to the board members?
No, they didn't come to our budget coordination meeting. They were out of town.
Any further discussion?
I just want to get and I'm very serious, want to get my mind clear. As I recall, there was a $12,000 vote that went down, and then there was a $6,000 recommendation that could have passed, but for whatever reason.
That by a mistaken vote, clearly. So, you know, we can.
It wasn't my mistaken vote.
I recall Mr. Reeves voted for the 6,000 and you voted against it.
It wasn't my mistake.
Madam Chair, the question's been called for, so.
Okay, we're all clear on this motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Let me see the hands. Ayes, hands. 1, 2, 3. Nay. Is that an aye?
No, I voted last time. No, I voted aye.
Okay.
Okay. So I think that was 4-3. Passes. Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that the Lee County Board of Commissioners fund the school system at the current expense as last year.
Motion has been made that to amend the budget ordinance to fund the schools at the same level of current expense funding as last year. Is there any discussion? You're the
Yes.
maker of the motion, sir, so.
Well, it seems to me that I made a commitment to provide funding for current operating expenses for the coming year. The state seems to have come up with their funds that they had promised. Federal seems to have come up with their funds. We still are asked for a lot of money that we found areas that could have been cut at the school board. And it seems unfair to provide additional funding to schools when all other county employees have had to take cuts in all departments and staffing for the past 3 years. And the state's made the teachers and teacher assistant positions fully funded. And I think we need to hold the line on spending. Times are tough. We need to face economic realities that those that rely on tax dollars are going to have to do more with less. Most other counties are funding at the same level of last year. Examples of that are Moore, Cumberland, Orange, etc. Lee County is hurting more than some of these counties in unemployment, and it'll not get any better for a while that I can see in any economic indicators. So that's my position.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Hayes?
All right. We took a vote last week and passed the education budget. I believe it was 4-3. I think that the compromise or resolution that we came to is the appropriate one. That is that we were going to add $500,000, and that of course, we're not going to be increasing taxes. I think that if we go back to where it was and we worked out, we had the county manager, you will recall, and the superintendent get together and talk about what might be done that would help us to minimize the loss of people in the classroom, meaning teachers, assistant teachers, tutors, and the like. And they resolved or determined that if we were to step up and put in $500,000 more in addition to what we had already proposed, and that they reduced, I believe, by an equal amount or thereabouts, that it would be something that would save jobs, plain and simple. I think that if we do not fulfill that commitment, that vote, that official vote, which we took, I think we're going to see some positions lost. I would almost guarantee it. If you don't believe it, just walk that line, run that risk, and you're going to see it. I hope not, but I have the feeling it's going to happen. I would urge this board to maintain and affirm the vote that we took the other day. We talked about it at great length. We've had educators in, we've had the superintendent, we've had the chairman of the school board in, we've asked questions, good dialogue, and there was even a meeting the other day with Mrs. Shook and with the superintendent and I believe Mr. Crumpton. There were 3 or 4 people there with the financial officers, I believe, and I believe that meeting was very satisfactory. They finished answering most of the questions that were raised. So, you know, we're in a time that we're not in the 1950s, we're not in the 1980s, we're in 2011, and we've got to, I think because Lee County is a small county, we have to work harder to try to compete with the other counties around us. Other counties have assets that we do not. We have some assets that they do not. But I think Lee County, and I know the county, I've been here all my life practically, I believe that we have to continue to push forward and to do all that we can do to compete. The computers, the language programs that have been put in, all of these things, these are not gimmicks as they've been described. Like you may have seen in the Herald the other day, Mr. Liggett, the editor, looked at the computer program and came out very impressed with the way those computers work and what they are to those kids and how they are monitored and managed. I thought at that time, if any one of us, or if he were to go in and look at the language program, Rosetta Stone, or any of these others, the same outcome would very likely occur. That is to look at them, examine them, and not just throw darts at them. You know, look at what these teachers are the tools they have and the monies that are being expended on these type of state-of-the-art systems. Lee County is really doing some very fine work in its educational program. Again, this is not my dad's 68 Oldsmobile. This is a new age. We are competing hard. The better schools we have, the more attractive we're going to be to industry looking at Lee County saying, shall we go there or shall we go to Wake County or Durham or Orange? I think we're in a real fight here, a real contest, and I think that I urge each one of us, we have the money to do this. It is not going to cost us any new taxes. It is going to put us up to the line that we have agreed is our policy, or near that line, but not below it. That we can do this on a 2-year basis and come out of it hopefully being there for our school system when it needs us. And I just really would urge us to, I don't know if the motion, what happens, Mr. Crumpton, Mr. Hoyle, to the motion that we've already passed? Is that invalidated? What's going on here?
Today's the day.
Yeah, I would think it's the same thing that would happen on our Temple Theater funding.
Yeah.
You know, it's being revisited. It's being revisited.
Okay, but we have a vote.
I don't think there's any but. I think there's a motion been made on the floor.
I think I was very clear in our budget session last Monday that the budget wasn't final, that the decisions we made in there, if there was new information that came about, that we could change it. And I want to clarify something for you. Jim and Charlie and I did meet with the Chairman Williams and Dr. Moss and Bill Tatum last Wednesday. And I will say that the tone of the meeting was respectful, probably one of the best meetings that as a commissioner I've been involved with. But I left there with a whole lot more questions than answers. As you know, my point of contention has been, they keep telling us they need to make $2.8 million of discretionary cuts, but right now they're paying out $2.5 million in supplements. So first of all, I wanted to take a look at what their supplements policy was, because I firmly believe that when you have financial policies and you give out $2.5 million in supplements, you need to have a supplements policy. Guess what? There isn't one there, okay? And one of the questions I asked and I'm going to share a couple of answers with you. I think that maybe I'm not the only one that finds these a little unusual. One of my questions was, what is the prioritization for your discretionary cuts? The answer I got back, once we've finalized our budgets, then we'll establish our priorities. Unconscionable to me.
Well, no, that's not unconscionable. It's logical. Once we have made our commitment, they will better understand. And please, the peanut gallery would just hold it.
It's called the citizens.
Yeah, let's please, citizens, if you will, keep your comments to yourself.
Well, no, I just let us have a reasoned comments here, and we don't need any participation from the audience.
One other thing I want to ask is, by statute, taxpayers and the commissioners were entitled to certain information, and way back the first part of May, what we asked for were those employment contracts. We were told initially that they were part of personnel records we couldn't have. So Mr. Hoyle wrote a very nice letter but said, here's the general statutes, we are required. So they sent back with Superintendent Moss's data. They forgot to include the little deferred compensation part that was in there. And so finally at 4:15 on Thursday, we get those contracts. And that's the only one we've really had a chance to look at. The others, Mr. Hoyle was covering for Mr. Talbert Friday in court. And I question the urgency with which they did their last resolution or whatever it was to be able to have supplements apply to salary to all of their administrators. And I've looked at all of the RIFs and whatever, and I have yet to see any high-level central office staff or assistant principals in their plan to downsize, and yet those are the two areas that they're going to receive significant cuts from the state. So that was part of my reason for prioritizing. And
they're required, I believe, are they not, to cut a certain number of assistant principals? I mean, the state has,
they're
through
doing their
the budget, that was a...
No.
They're discretionary cuts, so they decide where they want to cut.
No, I'm talking about the...
They received a reduction.
The approved budget has in it a language that says you must
No.
reduce
No.
so many in the administration.
They gave guidance in their budget resolution that they restored full funding for teachers and teachers' assistants. Then they were given instructions that their months of employment, or MOE, for assistant principals was cut. But that's over last year's funding level. And we've been funding principals out of local tax dollars, assistant principals, since time immemorial. I mean, local tax dollars have been doing that, but not state mandated ones. So, I mean, it's actually like a shell game, Richard. I mean, we are funding things in the schools that are not essential. I'll give you a good example. They've left things on the table. A good example of that was the $600,000 they could have saved in outsourcing custodial and janitorial work. We said, have you made every adjustment that you can make internally before we have to raise our level of funding? And they did not deny that they had the opportunity to reduce by another $600,000, which is just coincidentally is the same amount of money that we're voting now to give them additional over last year, roughly the same amount. And it's still on the table. They chose not to do that because they didn't have to. They weren't feeling the pinch like the rest of our departments have felt. Our departments are cutting back every step, and they've been doing that for 2 years. The schools are getting increased in funding, and it's not because they don't deserve it. It's just we can't afford it. We've got $90,000 in deferred compensation being paid to our superintendent, and not even all of the Board of Education members were aware of it. Okay? And they just extended him another year when they didn't have to do it. They're obligating money we don't have to spend. And it's time, if they were fully forthcoming with us, if they had made every adjustment they could make internally, I could understand giving them more money this year just to keep up with the cost of living. But they haven't made the adjustments. They're thumbing their noses at this board because we have traditionally given them a rubber stamp for every dollar that they've wanted. And I think it's high time that we stood up and said, we're all cutting. We need to make adjustments for efficiency down in the schools as well.
Commissioner Hayes, I have just one question for you. Can you guarantee to every taxpayer that the extra money, if that's the way this board decides to go, will improve academic performance?
Well, that's a loaded question.
It's not.
Well, it is. I mean, how can I guarantee or predict anything? I do believe, and
I know what you believe, but here's my point, is I think really, we need to look at outcomes.
Yeah.
And
I understand your argument. I really do. I think that, you either lean left or right on this question. There's no perfect answer to it. My feeling is, there are a lot of things that you're saying that are on the record now about your disbelief in certain types of measures or certain kinds of things going on. I do believe you're setting yourself up and you're setting this board up to have that challenged, because I don't know empirically if what you're saying is absolute or not. This is your opinion and let me finish. And what you feel, and I understand I can see that is your disposition. I happen to believe that we should continue to provide support to our school system. I happen to believe that I don't want any of the classrooms to be affected if it's at all possible. And
that's the first thing that's being affected, teachers and teachers' assistants. How many central office staff and whatever have you seen rifted?
Well, I don't know the answer, but I thought that we had a pretty good feeling, and I wish some of the other commissioners who voted the other day positively for this would chime in. This should not be Richard's battle for the school board or for our public school system, but I do feel strongly that everything that we can do for them will turn out positively and a plus for our county. I should believe that.
Let me respond. No, hang on, Charlie. One item. I want to respond to something he said about emotions and about our disbelief.
Try not to be emotional.
Well, I think you are actually
for the right reasons.
Well, I don't want to mistake passion for emotion. But let me argue this. These were not my words. These were the words of the school board, okay? They left $600,000 on the table. Those were their words, not mine. This is not my belief. It is my belief that what they spoke was true, that they said they left $300,000 to $600,000, and that was again confirmed in the meeting that Linda, Charlie, and I had with them, that they chose not to do that. That was their words, not mine. The $90,000 in deferred comp, we didn't know anything about. That was in his contract that we just got delivered after all of our meetings were over with. We didn't know that, and 2 of the school board members did not know that was in his contract. I'm telling you, they're flushing money down there as quickly as they can, and it's time we drew a line in the sand. No more. We're going to watch every penny that's being spent in this county, and we're going to hold you accountable.
Yeah, let me just say one thing. I respect Chairman Hayes' position. I think he's got a heart of gold. And I would love to
He's not the chairman anymore.
I think he has a heart of gold.
Gavel in.
Get a grip.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm still, working at this. But, and I'd love to do the same thing. I did sit in the classrooms. In all respect to Mr. Liggett, he's not an educator. I was. And what I saw was, or the way we used to teach, we had some of the most complicated computerized air traffic systems in the world. But we never took them in to touch the computers until we had taught them all the basics. And what I'm seeing today is they're teaching the basics on the computers. And I don't know, it would take a lengthy study to say, are we doing better or are we doing worse? I don't know that. I don't know that we have the statistics that would show us one way or the other. What I do know is by funding at the current level, we're not cutting anything as far as the county away from the schools. we're funding at the same level. We're not responsible for making up what the state or the federal cuts. It's not our responsibility. Our responsibility is for providing a good basic education, and nothing shows me that, and we've gone through it, we haven't guessed at it, we've gone through boxes and pages and pages. We've done our homework, and I don't see anything there that would tell me that by going at the current funding, that we would be shorting our educational responsibility, and that the children of this school wouldn't have the same quality of education they have today. We're having the same school teachers, we have the same teachers, assistants in the classrooms. They're going to get the same education. Hopefully, with what the state has increased, they're going to get the supplies that they need that they didn't get last year. So I don't know where we need to just keep, I guess at some point in time, you gotta stop and think, this continual funding, increasing in funding, somebody's gotta answer for where the money's going. And if we don't start now, I don't know that we ever will, and it could go as sky high. So I want to be on record that I want to be fiscally responsible for getting the very best education that we can. Does that mean we have to give some more money? Right now, I don't see anything that would indicate to me that we need to. If somebody can show me that we need to, then I will back up and review that again. But everything that I've reviewed, I don't see it. And that's the reason I made the motion.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say that I've heard the superintendent's name brought up. I've heard the school board's name brought up. It doesn't matter what level of funding we do here, as far as affecting the superintendent and the school board. It's going to affect the teachers and the students. That's who it's going to affect.
How do you know that, Doc?
Well, how do you know it won't?
Because have you seen the RIF notices they're giving out?
And I understand those can be rescinded before September when they go back to school.
And have you seen any administrative non-student?
And I can't tell the school board how to spend that money. That's not my job. My job is to fund it. And
Well, actually,
the Constitution-
that's not quite correct, because you can tell the school board within reason, you can give them a purpose and function budget, and you can limit.
But I can't tell them how to do it.
Well, you can't tell them how to suck the egg, but you can tell them what the egg
No, you
is,
can't
okay?
do it. You've tried it.
No, I haven't tried it.
Yes, you have,
All
too.
I've been trying to do is be responsible to the taxpayers, Doc, and I think we need to
I'm
do
trying to be
that.
responsible to taxpayers, but I'm also trying to be responsible to the citizens of Lee County.
That's who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the citizens of Lee
Right,
County.
and you're not the only one that pays taxes. I pay taxes too.
I know.
Okay, so what
I
I'm
pay
saying
city
is,
and county taxes.
well, that's good for you. Maybe you can donate some to the city and help them give some money to this.
I'm already donating a whole bunch, I promise you.
So Doc, let me just ask you this. If the Department of Public Instruction says central office for a school your size and whatever, and your ADM, you're allowed $850,000 for central office, and that's the state's, and under previous administrations, this isn't a Republican thing, this is under previous administrations, they said that's what it needs, but when you take a look at their total costs, it's over $2 million. Does that not run a red flag up?
There's a lot of things that run red flags up, Linda, but I'm not going to get into the business of getting right down. First of all, there's been too much talk about the superintendent. There's some personality conflicts. Anyone that can't see that is blind.
I'm hoping here that we're not going to get into personality conflicts, that we're talking about the essence of the issues, so.
But I think this board needs to do what's right. And if we can help the school without raising taxes, and that's what it's all about. I've pledged not to raise taxes, and we haven't raised taxes. We've been in a recession here now for 2.5 years or 3 years. There hasn't been a property tax increase in that time. This board and the previous board, I think, has done a good job to maintain the tax rate as it is. And if we can do what we need to do and still maintain the tax rate, not increase taxes, then I think we need to do what's right. That's what the citizens expect out of us, I think.
Madam Chair, I'd like to also offer one other observation about this agreement that was made, and that was that when the county manager met with the superintendent to work out a deal, he went beyond what I thought we had authorized him by negotiating it, or at least it was offered to him to do a 2-year commitment on our part. And we don't know what our tax revenues are going to be next year. We don't know that we're going into a double-dip recession. I think it would be very premature for us to obligate money beyond this current fiscal year into anything as part of a 2-year deal, because I'll guarantee you, school board won't forget about that next year. It come this time when they're asking us to give all the money we previously obligated. So I think at the very least, now I know the motion's already on the table, but I think we ought to remind ourselves that that's a 2-year obligation on funding, not just this year.
Madam Chair, go for it.
Question has been called
A
and,
bit early, I haven't had
got-
my say.
okay, and I was gonna say there's
I
two,
got one question.
okay.
Don't we have to have a motion to take the money away we've already appropriated? Or we're gonna-
We haven't appropriated it yet.
Well, we voted to.
The other day in our budget work session, we tried to prioritize some things, but as I said a couple times, the budget was not official until tonight's meeting, when we adopted the budget ordinance, so there's
In other
still,
words, you changing your plan now. You're gonna take some of it away. That's what Charlie's plan is.
Well, we haven't voted on that yet either. That's got to be voted on.
It's gonna be voted.
Okay.
I was just gonna say, until the budget ordinance is passed, the commissioners can change anything they want in the
Yeah,
budget.
The budget order is passed, according to Robert's rules, we can still discuss something, but Robert had a.
And you can increase if you want to.
Commissioner Reeves?
Members of the board, I will submit to you that one of the requests I heard for money was 4.1 million, which was absolutely absurd. Then it was 2 point something. It went in the same category. And when I asked that the superintendent and the Board of Education submit a number that we could work with, and they came back at 400,000, and then an additional 100,000. Obviously, I've been at the table more than one time, and if you can survive from $500,000 increase from 4.1, then obviously there are some games being played. There's no question. I'll submit that to you. There's no doubt in my mind. But the other side of that argument is, in my years here, I've relied on staff to make the best case for us doing or not doing. I fully and completely trust the finance director and the county manager in going forward to do business on behalf of this board, especially financial business. Now, I will ask if the manager will recite what our rationale was for going to, we already had 160,000 on the table, and we came back with 400 plus 1, making it 660. If he'll just refresh my memory very quickly.
The discussion that we had with Dr. Moss, if everybody remember, was, how much money would it take to keep teacher assistants in play? And I think if everybody remember, he said 800,000. So then our discussion was, and what I was instructed to do was to talk to the superintendent about how much that 800,000 were they willing to cover within their own budget. So when I met with him, he said he was willing to cover 400,000. So that meant we would have to cover the other 400,000. And then in some of the discussions, we talked about tutors and graduation ambassadors, which, to some of our folks was a significant deal. That's where the extra 100,000 came up. As to, I think there was a question about, what does this do to us fiscally for making a commitment to 2 years? Well, our discussion with the superintendent is if we don't commit to 2 years, and understanding that the state makes a biennium budget, which is a 2-year budget, and that there's an additional $500,000 discretionary cut on top of the $2.8 million cut next year, we would be right back at the table again trying to achieve the same results, which is to keep teacher assistants in place and to help with the tutors. That's why, because he threw that out right away, that, we'll be right back at the table again next year talking about the 500,000 discretionary cut. And, when they look at the discretionary cut, they obviously are looking in areas that maybe we would prefer that they not look. But, you know, it is difficult, even with allocating by purpose and function and limiting their ability to transfer down to 10%. If you realize that 10% of our, you know, budget to them is, you know, $1.5 million, they still have a lot of flexibility within that 10% when you do purpose and function. So the question comes down to what level of funding are you comfortable with in giving the Board of Education. And you know, we threw, you know, this is a proposal. You know, my recommendation was still the 160. I was instructed to go negotiate, you know, to find out, you know, what it would take, the teacher assistants and the tutors and graduation ambassadors, and that's what I did. So that's a proposal there.
Question for the county manager. Were you aware at the time that you negotiated this tentative agreement with the superintendent of schools that they had the potential savings of $600,000 by outsourcing janitorial and custodial work? Were you aware of that at the time?
I knew that it was $300,000 to $600,000,
Right.
$300,000 to $600,000. Actually, I knew when they bid that, which was several months back. So I knew that that was something that they were discussing.
And did that come up as an option?
I did not discuss when he made his presentation to us about the areas that he was going to cut to get his $400,000. That was not an area where he was going to cut.
You reaffirmed that this week with us as well when we met with them. They weren't desperate enough. I mean, they would sooner lay off teachers, assistants, and teachers than save money by outsourcing custodial work. And that says volumes to me.
Well, I
I
thought
haven't
that,
heard one of them make that statement.
They told us that in our meeting.
Yeah, they did.
They told us that in our meeting.
But there was an explanation as to why they did not wish to outsource.
Yes, there was a very good explanation given.
Because of the possible treatment of the people that presently work here.
No.
That may or may not be hired.
No, that's not what they
Well,
said.
that's what I heard.
Well, but you weren't in the meeting, Richard. What they told us why they didn't.
They have
different meetings.
This is a meeting that the three of us went to last week.
I
The
know
last
that.
time it was discussed publicly, or in that meeting, it was discussed, and the reason was given to us, and tell me if I'm wrong, because no one made a motion. That's the reason we were given. They said no one made a motion.
Well, in the meeting with us, when we discussed it, the fact was brought out that the people in employment are local people. Local people are working.
To include, if I'm not mistaken, Doc, one of the members of the school board's family.
Well,
Okay.
I don't get into that.
Well, but the other side of the coin was, at the end of the discussion, they did say no one made a motion.
Let me clarify that, because I talked to the Board of Education members, and he said they discussed it, and then and Chairman Williams did not ask if anybody wished to make a motion. I clarified that.
Right.
And Mr. Tatum made the motion, while I moved in that we recommend the $4 million, however it went. So
Right.
nobody had an opportunity to make it, nobody was
I
asked
agree.
to.
I was commenting because that's what I heard in our meeting, not the one that you three went to.
Okay.
Well,
And while
you get all your
contracts,
stuff said.
you got to renew a
No.
contract every year.
No, I haven't.
Years and
Go ahead.
the subject.
Okay.
I want to ask, or now ask, because I see two different things. I see the manager and our finance director going and listening to what was going to be offered up and what they thought we could live with to come back and present it to us. When I had personnel questions, I don't hesitate to go and speak with our personnel director. I take her word because we hired her and she's proven to be a very good hire. The same thing for these two staff people. I can't deny that what the three of you have brought to the table this year has been astounding. I don't disagree one bit. That those are the kind of questions and things that we should have been doing all along. But I can tell you that I've asked for that kind of attention in the past and not found it. The problem I have today is that we're here under the gun right now. You can say that, well, we need that information, we still want that information, and I don't disagree, we ought to have it. But maybe what we ought to consider doing is moving forward on July 1, trying to set things up so that we get that more easily and more readily than what we've done over the past. But I have to ask the manager and the finance director if they believe that what we're offering up is reasonable and fair overall for the county.
You want to speak first, Lisa?
Yes, sir.
Put it on the spot,
That's your job. That's what we're
You're
doing.
right.
And also tell us if we're going to get hit with any of the the tornado victims who we may lose out on, or they may all be appealing their property values come July 1st of next.
I'll say
That's a
this.
different question.
Yeah,
That is.
bring that up later. Don't mix it.
That is.
There's probably some need for changes.
I will tell you.
Based on the
that-
questions that we're asking, the answers you got, there's probably some need for changes, and they probably see that now. And
All right.
like Robert said, maybe next budget time, you will see some changes that you haven't seen in the past.
Madam Chair, I got a question to the staff.
I would. My staff knows I don't like to use the word fair. It's because it's.
That's my word. Go on
It's
with
very. What is fair to one may not be fair to another, and we have that discussion quite often. They're all laughing at me right now, but.
Lisa's getting ready to run out the door.
I know. I see that.
I am never done, Charlie.
I'm going to turn it back around to y'all. You all have to decide what's equitable to them. My job is to provide you the information.
No, not equitable. I'm talking about the information that you come away with. Are you satisfied that you've done or received the best you could have gotten out of this deal?
I will say I've received more information this year from the Board of Education than I've ever received.
Now, wait a minute, that's a cop-out. Now, come on,
I
he
understand.
asking you the question, did you get a full disclosure, and did you understand all the money disclosures that were given by the school board this year? And I hold you to your previous statements on this.
I will say that it's difficult to track
That's right.
where all their money is
You
going.
can't track it.
You can't track
And
it.
one of the
It's a
things that
Kabuki dance, it's moving all the time.
It is, and one of the things that's more interesting about their budget than anything is they're saying, well, we still have to figure out what our priorities are going to be.
Right.
Well, you don't really find out what their priorities are until they pass their consolidated
Until you give them the
budget.
extra money.
Until they pass their consolidated budget in October, and unfortunately, we're normally the ones that are going first in the process.
Wasn't it Nancy Pelosi that said so famously, you have to pass the bill before you know what's in it? You know? I mean,
Well, look,
Yeah, I saw that in Raleigh this week.
let me, everybody's chiming in, but let me just say this, the school budget is a truly a work of art. I mean, to manage it, no, it's truly, I say that, and it's defensible. To be able to manage, I think it puts the county government in sort of in the shadow compared to the complexities of trying to run a public school system that's as large as this one, let alone one that's much larger. To survive, to do the things they have to do, you have to be skilled at how to manage these monies, and this kabuki game, as long as it's legal, it goes on. It goes on all over the state, all over the country.
The question has been called, and did you call?
In closing,
Well, I can call the question,
in closing, I want to say to you that one of the things that I hope will come out of this exercise is that the general public will hold the Board of Education more accountable than they have in the past. I hear tons of questions directed at this board about things that you can't do anything about. You can't do anything about it. They are elected boards just like we are. I would hope citizens would take the same opportunity to come and have public comments to us to do it with the Board of Education.
Question has been called, and the motion has been to amend the budget ordinance to fund them at the same level as this current fiscal year. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Hey,
What's the hands? What are the ayes? Ayes Hey, woo-hoo, ayes.
Thank you.
Those opposed?
Now you're fighting me.
Okay. Mr. Parks, motion fails. 4-3. Did you get the numbers?
Now, Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion, please,
Yes, Mr. Hayes.
that we affirm the budget that we passed at our workshop for the school system as it was presented, as it was discussed, and as it was approved, and that we move on.
Explain the 2-year commitment. I'm not sure I picked up on that the other day.
In your
Can we legally do
amended,
that?
yes, ma'am. Because we're dealing with current expense here, and we want to make sure that, you know, this Board of Education understands that this is a special appropriation. In the discussions that we had with the superintendent is that we would have a side agreement on that $500,000, and it would not become part of the base, what they consider the base for current appropriations to the Board of Education. In the amended budget ordinance under Section 25 or 24, it spells out what that special appropriation is and the terms for that special appropriation to them. In funding with the Board of Education, the amount of money that we commit to annually in current appropriation, current expense appropriation, becomes the base number. So if we ever wanted to cut their funding, we can't just arbitrarily, by law, cut their funding. We have to cut funding across the board.
Is that just for the 2 years, sir?
As this is, yes, sir.
Or is it for?
It's forever, actually, it's forever. So what we were trying to do is put wording in place that where that $500,000 per year did not increase our base, so that the base is actually $15,333,000 and some change.
Okay, let me ask, because I think I was hearing Commissioner Hart ask something different than what you were answering. The 500,000 for this year and next year cease in what, 12, 13?
It would be 13, 14.
13, 14.
We would not be obligated for it in 13, 14.
Right. And it would go back as if they only received $160,000. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
And
So the new
yeah.
the new current expense.
That's
That's
correct.
right. The new current
That's correct.
expense base is $15,338,050.
Then each year you move your base, you're stuck with it pretty much. without having
Unless
to-
we cut
Yeah.
everybody across the board.
Right.
John, you had done a thorough study, and what did we rank of all 100 and some counties as far as what Lee County contributes to current expense? What's our ranking in the state?
Based on budgeted figures from the current fiscal year, if you just compare yourself to the 100 counties, other 100 counties, or 99 counties, we're 25th right now at $1,580 per pupil spending.
See, and that's what's
This
been omitted in this whole discussion, is how much we are so much higher than the other counties. And you look at our smaller tax base, you know, I think that's amazing.
Well, I still think, as I said earlier, that at least the three of you have brought terrific questions and accountability questions to the table that we ought to put in place as we move forward. But there are a couple of things that I want to ask before we move on. Are there any other items that we're going to look at?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we ought to look at all the items that we plan to look at and discuss. I would also ask the manager what assurance that we have that they understand the terms of the agreement.
We should, you know, put this in a contract to them.
Yes.
Once we approve this ordinance tonight.
Do we need a motion to do this?
Well, we'll have to wait after this one,
Okay.
once on the table.
Well, no, then I'll amend the one on the table to include that language as being a part of the contract and to accept the board budget ordinance as presented with, after discussion of any other, what else do we have?
We got couple of other items that were brought up.
Okay, so,
External to the schools. I mean, this is the school
No,
question.
I understand.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
so we have an amendment to the motion that, in addition to his motion to appropriate that money, includes the contract.
Requirement.
Contingent
fund-
on the
yeah, That the funding is contingent upon the contract between the two boards.
Right.
All those in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Now we've got an amended motion, okay? All those in favor of the amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Okay. Did you get that, email? Okay, anybody need to
Did not
take
approve
a?
the ordinance, they just approved the funding for the schools at the $500, the $660,000.
They
Is that
amended the
correct?
motion. That is
Right.
correct.
Okay, I got it.
Recess.
That ought to move us up to number one in the state now. Hopefully.
Actually, it doesn't really increase our ranking that much. Believe it or not,
Yeah,
there's
It'll stay about the same.
the
Madam Chair,
discrepancy between.
I would suggest we recess for 5 minutes and then come back and finish these other items.
Okay, I can call a recess without a motion or a vote, so
Yeah.
we're gonna recess in 5 minutes.
If everybody holds their funding the same way, it pops us up to ranking level. Because that works out to $68.
Billy, that's spelled We're just making an observation. Quoted it correctly.
Use the word, use his name. So is
I'll tell you what, when you really outrageous,
Okay.
Loud and louder.
Commissioners all back? Okay, continuing on with our budget ordinance. Okay.
Madam Chair, I move the Lee County Board of Commissioners conduct a comprehensive performance audit of the Lee County school system as well as the Lee County Departments and Services, that we authorize the county manager to solicit RFPs from external consultants who specialize in such services. This would spread out over the next 2 fiscal years, with the LCSS audit taking place in 11-12 fiscal year, county audit taking place in years 12-13. Essentially, I think what we've heard here tonight from the citizens, Mr. Reeves mentioned it in a roundabout way, is that we need to get a good handle on what we're doing, and we haven't been able to do that completely. It's our responsibility.
Okay, hold on. Let's deal with your motion first. Your motion was to authorize the county manager to
Solicit
to conduct a
RFPs.
comprehensive performance audit of the Lee County system as well as the Lee County Department. In other words, he solicited an RFP to do that.
Okay. Okay, so motion has been made to authorize the county manager to solicit RFPs for performance audit for both the Lee County schools and the Lee County.
Yes.
And I heard you say spread it out over 2 years?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
I have a question. Couple. Mr. Crumpton, how much, do you have any idea how much we're talking about to do something like this, or do you, Mrs. Shook? How much are we talking about?
Well, I know for the school part, anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000. And for the county part, I haven't seen Davy.
It's typically more because they do a detailed audit of DSS and the health department, and it requires more work. So it's, I think Duplin's was like 100 to 120 for the county.
Okay, the other question is, so it'd be 100,000 plus.
A year.
Is this legal to, I mean, can we audit the school system?
Absolutely. The type of audit that is done and the questions that they will ask, it is completely legal.
Okay.
I think there are precedents for that, Mr. Hayes. I know that several counties, I've seen actually the results of several of those audits, and I think that the cost is certainly significant at $100,000, but I think that in every case that I've seen, and I've seen 3 different reports now on school audits in North Carolina, every case I've seen, there have been anywhere from $6 to $10 million in savings identified as a result of the audit. I think that's a pretty good investment.
Well, help me with this. If we have an audit, what can you imagine that we would do with the information of the school system, for instance? Would you believe that if there are things that you do not approve of in the audit, that this would be a cause to change things with them as far as funding goes? In other words, what's the end game here?
I don't think the end game is number one, it would help us to make sure that we're spending the taxpayers' dollar wisely. Second thing, I don't think we've had such an audit in the county that I can find. County
Our
or
history.
school system.
Yeah.
It's not just a school system, but what we've seen that the audits do, it shows ways that we can be more effective at spending the taxpayers' dollars, show areas that, where we're doing well and encouraged to continue to do well. The other is show us where there's areas we might could do better. And without that total knowledge, we really aren't making good, we're going sort of like you said on feeling. But if we can, what little we've got this year has helped us greatly in understanding what the budget process is. If we could get a total outside, and there again, a total outside group that could take a look at it and help us become more efficient, if it'll save us that kind of money, it's worth it.
I would like to offer that these performance audits are not just a numbers game. They also look at procedures and policies and that sort of thing. And what you find is if you keep doing business the same way year after year after year, and you have a tendency to say, well, we don't want to try that because that's outside our comfort zone, but then you don't get the benefit of a third party coming in and saying, you know what, these other school systems are doing it this way and they're saving millions. And then you get the benefit of that third party review and recommendations on how they can improve procedures, how they can eliminate certain programs in favor of others, which are more cost effective. These companies that do these audits are very, very good at it. A lot of them are former school administrators and accountants that understand the shell game that's played with the K-12 money around the state. They're experts at this business, and they know how to find savings that you wouldn't otherwise know about.
Well, I have no problem with an audit. Again, I want to make sure that it's something that we are not setting ourselves up for in some type of suit or conflict. And I hear you, Mr. Crumpton, saying that we can require a certain kind of audit that would there would be no they could not refuse to participate in such. The reason I say school system, I mean, I understand.
To clarify that,
the government.
The Board of Education or its staff can refuse to answer questions from the audit company. The only thing they have to provide is what is allowed under the Public Information Act.
All right.
So if they don't cooperate with the audit, then the next thing you know, there's Public Information Act request after Public Information Act request that goes from the audit company to the Board of Education.
But let me ask this question, though. I think maybe that's not quite correct. Isn't it also true that anything that would be available to the commissioners would be made available naturally to the audit company? And that's more than what you can get through Information Act.
That's
correct. You can get anything related to the financial operation of that school system is an entitlement to each and every commissioner on this board. So if the school system were to reject or to keep the audit company at arm's length, we could then help them penetrate by asking the information on behalf of the audit company, correct?
In certain instances, yes, we can.
My interest is that I would hope that the school board would welcome such an audit. It would help them see what they're doing. I mean, you get so convoluted budget process, and you just mentioned that a while ago. You get a convoluted budget process. If it could help them understand what they're doing or what they could do better, and show them what they're doing well, I would think that they would welcome such an audit.
Yeah. Well, again, I believe in audits. It is a pricey kind of consideration, and I would let the public understand that we're talking $100,000 plus, and I think it's a value consideration. The majority of this board would say, I think that's a good value, or otherwise, but it's not insignificant when we are talking about, and this is quite an undertaking. This would not be, I mean,
a performance audit is quite a bit different than a financial audit.
Right.
Financial audits come in and they test your financial data to make sure that you're in compliance with GASB rules and in your own rules, state grant rules, that kind of stuff.
Now, are we talking about performance, teaching, academic performance, or are we talking about how they spend their money? Are they getting the best bang for their buck?
Let me give you an example here of
one that's been done, Lou?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You know what the
I've
results
got
were?
files this thick. Let me give you some savings potentials. Burke County found, and this is Evergreen Solutions, but I think there's 10 companies that do this type of thing, and I would want to get bids from everybody, but Evergreen seems to be the one that's doing most of them in North Carolina. Burke County, what they found was $22 million in local funds over a 5-year period. Duplin County, $15 million over a 5-year period. Beaufort County Schools, $6 million over a 5-year period. Davie County is now just into theirs, and they're the first one I've seen that's done on both a county level and a school level, and they've just now awarded the contract, and that's in process. But let me explain, I pulled some information from Burke County. And so typically it goes like this, John sends out the RFPs, they come back, we take a look, we may want to bring a couple of those companies in and just interview them and ask some more in-depth questions, and then we award the contract. And then once they've completed this study, you have a joint meeting with the Board of Education and the Board of Commissioners. And in this case, Dr. Linda Recio, who's the person who does most of the schools, she came in and they're finding good things that the schools are doing too. So they commend as well as recommend. And I think our schools do have plenty of good things. But she goes over the financial management area. This was included in their RFP. District administration, transportation, child nutrition, facilities, safety and security. And so it covers a lot of those areas also. So really what we're looking at here is best practices, in, first of all, creating a budget. And I don't think anybody would deny that this year's school budget process was anything, I'm not going to use fiasco, but challenging, to say weird. And so this is basically, best practices to make sure that operational efficiencies are there, that educational, the tax dollars for education in the classroom are best spent. And what they do a lot of times is look at peer counties. And so, for example, how much are we in education dollars spending per child for administrative expenses, for actual in-class instruction? So there's a lot of it, and there are lots of sample RFPs out there, and I would say that maybe if John wanted to do some research and present to this board an RFP before he issues it, if this board decides to do that may,
Let me ask you a question. Include all the agencies that are, and everyone's funded by the county, not just the Board of Education.
That's what he's doing on the second round.
Right.
Yeah, the first round. Let me ask you, I heard you mention the two boards meeting. Is that mandatory or what? Because
it's not mandatory.
Well, that's fine. I want to know in advance because dictate how I vote. The second thing is, it would seem to me that even if it costs 100 or 125, we're probably losing that much right now by not knowing. And thirdly, I think having that as a foundation to work from puts us in better standing when we challenge issues that concern all of us.
Well, I was just going to add to that. It would be better, would you not agree, that the school system, for instance, this is the biggie that would be audited, would be a willing partner in this?
Not contingent upon that.
We would encourage that, would we not? And the success of it would ultimately turn on the fact that they'd say, that's a good idea.
Well, it's no different than the appropriation we just made. I took the $400,000 they offered up in good faith, in hopes that they're telling this is all we can do. This kind of performance audit may contradict that in the future and show us that you can afford to do even more. So I would suggest that we move forward with it. But certainly I like your idea about having some folks come in. I'd like to ask some questions of folks. For example, the $22 million in Burke County, was that a savings over 5 years, or that's what they found they lost in 5 years?
That's an amount of savings over a 5-year period. And as you read some of these reports, you find that some of these savings are things that they recommend implementing right away. Others are saying over a 5-year period, if you make these changes, this is what your savings are going to be.
The problem is if you recommend it and then they're not implemented, that's, you got a problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but at least we'd have it done.
The public has a problem at that point,
Yeah.
because then you would have shown that you made every effort to get them to do the right thing.
I just feel like it'll help us overall.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, to get a base to start from, and then help us improve our whole system.
Yeah, the other thing I would like to pass on to the board is that if you've never had an audit or you can't recall having had an audit, I don't know if Mr. Hoyle can remember when's the last time the county had one, if we've ever had one.
We have a financial audit every year.
No, I'm talking about a performance audit. You know, the other thing is, though, you do check your fiscal controls from time to time in the county, but you don't really know deep down if you've got, especially if people have been in the same job for 15 or 20 years. In some departments, we can't control where the school's employees are, but in our departments, I think we rotate people from time to time. But you don't know under fiscal controls that you've got everything on the up and up. I mean, somebody that's had close ties to the purse strings and moving money around, you don't know that you can't assure yourself that maybe that you don't have fraud, waste, and abuse going on. And the only way to ever uncover that sort of thing is a third-party performance audit, unless you change positions from time to time. So I think it's a prudent thing to do.
Okay.
Chair, call for the question.
Okay, motion has been made to authorize Mr. Crumpton to send out RFPs, and I guess 2 phases in it. First phase is for the school comprehensive audit, and the second one is for the county, and to do that over a 2-year period of time. Is that the motion?
That's correct.
Well, let me make sure, in the event that I'm here, let's revisit after we get the first set of results to see what we get out of the deal.
Okay.
Before we move to the
Yeah,
second.
this is just something for planning.
Right.
Right.
All right.
And actually, I've got Davie County's consulting agreement, which is really good. Their payment plan is 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. So you're not paying up front, and they're delivering. They don't pay until they have delivered. So
And Madam Chair, I would hope that
It's a 2-year study.
now it's usually probably how long does each school one take, John? About 3 months, maybe.
I was told it could take longer depending upon, how much cooperation you get.
Right.
So it's 3 to 6 months.
I would not necessarily, I would leave it to the county manager to determine whether it's one company or 2 companies that do it. And we might want to make it a contingent clause or something, but have him figure out whether it's the same company and what, though I think the motion was to make the LCSS go first, to have the school system done, and I would hope.
That's where our biggest
Right.
amount of expense is
Right.
right now. So.
And I would hope that we would complete that before March of next year, because otherwise we're going to be not having the results of that as we deliberate next year. I want to have that under.
We have a question.
One-
We debate some of that.
One other question. Mr. Crumpton, are you comfortable with this?
Yes, sir, I'm fine with it.
Okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Okay, are there any other budget ordinance modifications?
Madam Chair, on the funding for the Economic Development Corporation, recall that in our budget coordination meeting earlier, we ran out of time and did not have a discussion of the EDC, and I believe we should take a few minutes and before final passage of the budget, consider an alternative organization of funding for economic growth in Lee County. Been a lot of discussion about between and among commissioners and with the public and the business leaders of the community about whether or not we are listening to the will of the taxpayers, and we're exercising all the options we have to grow jobs in Lee County. And I think that we've perhaps lost some control over the economic growth initiatives in the county by having an independent oversight board overseeing the $160,000 or $180,000 or so that we expend as a county with our few votes on that board. And I think that we would probably be better served by having the county manager directly in the line of authority over economic growth initiatives in the county. So I would move that the board that the board adjust our budget resolution to signal our withdrawal from the present EDC organization and structure, that we notify the town of Broadway and the city of Sanford of our intent to terminate our present contract for the EDC no later than December 31st of this year, that we transition the present EDC into an economic growth office working underneath the county manager, and that he exercise close oversight over the EDC funds disbursement until that transition is complete. We commit to honoring the existing grants, loan oversight, and other pledges we've contractually obligated to as of June the 30th of this year. So essentially that we transition the EDC over to an economic growth office underneath the county manager.
How about the people that have already been appointed to that board? Are they going to stay in place?
I would leave that to work out later. I mean, the motion is to make the transition, and then we can deliberate, how to do that and all of that later.
So let me understand the motion then. Is it just to put the EDC director underneath the county? That's what we're...
And to terminate the county's contract.
Terminate the contract, number one. We need a transition.
We need a transition.
EDC.
Right, that we'll terminate it effective December 31st of this year. They'll give us 6 months from the start of the fiscal year to make the transition. That we would change the title, so as there's no confusion. It's the Economic Growth Office is what I recommend. The Economic Growth Office underneath the county manager, so he's a direct report to the county manager. I did not include in the motion whether it would be a county employee or a contract employee. I would leave that to subsequent conversation. But that the essence of this is that we pull out of our agreement to have a joint EDC under the current arrangement, under the current board of directors, because there we've lost control over the disbursement of those funds and the activities of the EDC director. I want this office underneath the county manager where we have accountability from the board of commissioners so that we can direct the county manager to do certain things or to restrain or encourage certain activities on the part of the EDC or the economic growth coordinator or director. Essentially, we take back control of the economic growth for the county.
Where's the city of Sanford and Broadway going to fit into this?
Well, I think that we would still have the same collaborative environment with the city of Sanford and with the town of Broadway. And in fact, I'm not even suggesting that they have to contribute at this point. That we would still collaborate with them actively and encourage them to participate with us. And we may reform, an oversight board of some sort to help guide and direct the activity. I do not believe, and this is not personal, I just don't believe that the will of the people of Lee County is being exercised now in economic growth initiatives in the county. I think we've lost our focus on having a diversified jobs base, on small businesses in particular, that we haven't really put much energy into small businesses, into the service sector, into retail. We're not working on those right now. And the reason we're not is because the priorities of the current EDC board of directors is on trying to recruit more industrial jobs into Lee County. And I think it's high time that if we're going to spend 2/3 or 3/4 of all the funding for the EDC, that it be under our control, that they be responsive. If Commissioner Reeves asks the question about employment numbers, he doesn't have to wait 2 years to get the answer. He can get a report the next meeting, and we can have our economic growth coordinator periodically report and be accountable to this board.
The motion's been made. Now you're going to ask for discussion.
Is there anybody who hasn't participated that wants to add to this? So as I see this, we could also possibly take...
I have a question. I have a comment to make.
Okay, sure.
I mean, you're opening it up for...
Absolutely.
I think that this is a unjustified motion. I think it's far, far too aggressive based on the record of performance of the EDC, on the in-place industry base that we have here, on the sterling performances that we have experienced over the last 2 years. I think very, very good things have historically happened with our economic development corporation. I think that under the chairmanship of the new chair, I think with the discussions that we've had about the need to improve, to do better. That's a valid challenge. But I think to put the EDC under the thumb of the county commissioners and just sort of stiff Sanford and Broadway, I think is aggressive beyond reasonability. I think it's, I've talked with some of you before about let's challenge the EDC to continue to become more aggressive. Let's help them with a plan. Let's help them and encourage them to build a stronger board of directors, one that has representation from all segments of our community, and particularly with small business people as well as industrial people on that board. There's really a lot of good things, good work that can take place there, and I have, unless we're prepared to put the sign up on the outside of the city that says we're out of business, I wouldn't tamper with something that has been very productive and very good for Lee County. I think this notion is just, well, you know, Mr. Womack, with all due respect, you say what you're hearing. Well, let me say to you what I'm hearing, and I'm hearing many people say very good work is being done. We're blessed to have the industrial base that has been earned through the years, and we're in hard times right now, fairly hard times for the last 3 years, and it may be that way a couple more. But you don't kick it out when you're down like that. As a matter of fact, I think our industrial base is our saving grace right now. Because of it, we can do the things that we've done this year because we've got the tax base, and that comes from Caterpillar and Pfizer and Cody and Parksdale and Frontier. You know, these are good things, and I really can't. I suppose I have to sit here and listen, but I take real exception to trying to bring this in-house and put it under the thumb of this commission, because I hear and I see in everything I experience that some of you really want to throttle and stop the incentive program that we have, and I think that is foolhardy because it is a fact of life. And until the state or the nation says stop and desist, we've got to compete on the same playing field that all of these other counties do. If we are not careful, we will make the day of Moore and Chatham and the rest of these counties by saying they're going out of business in Lee on these high principles. What I would hope we would do is look at this. You talk about an audit. Audit the EDC. Look at them, help them to be better, leave them as a semi-autonomous governing body, and they are one, a 50501c3 entity. Let them continue to work with us and for us, but as strong partners, without bringing them in-house and then saying, you will do this or you will do that. I think that's,
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Womack. The way I envision this is we can take proposals. You know, the EDC is still a 501(c)(3). So I see us as next 6 months as getting proposals from the Chamber of Commerce, from the EDC, and from others,
Right.
you know, which will cause them to, you know, maybe come up with something that they can contract with for us to change the perspective that it's been for a while. Is that correct?
That is correct. I never said this is how it, this is specifically how it would be transitioned. I simply said that it should be transitioned under the authority of the county manager so it's more accountable back to this board. I even suggested that it could be done by contract or by county employee. I trust the county manager will come back with some suitable recommendations on how to do that. The other thing is that no one's suggesting we should hang out a business sign. I mean, we do more today than I think Moore County does in economic development activity. And Moore County,
and it shows.
well, I mean, it certainly does show what we get for the activity we've produced. I don't know that we've ever gotten accountability on the employment numbers that we've asked about. And when I've asked about it over the last year, I keep being told, well, we don't track that information because I'm accountable to a board of directors. You suggest audit the EDC? We can't audit the EDC right now without the permission of their board of directors. Now, if you bring it under the county manager, I promise you they'll get audited in a year because they'll be subject to audit under the county manager.
Well, I'm just saying that it takes away the benefit of the doubt, I think, and it's very severe to say we give them 6 months and they come under the county. I think that we should be reasonable, look at the very good that's been done through the years. If we have complaints about the composition of their board, how it operates, come forward. But let's try to help ourselves, help them, and not to sort of whack them and bring it in-house. I mean, there's just sort of an edge to that I think is too severe for the good that it has done and the promise that it holds for the future, truly.
Let me ask you a question, Commissioner Hayes.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned the sterling reputation over the last couple of years. Tell me what they bought in over the last couple of years, what we've actually recruited.
Well, over the last two years, they have pretty well maintained what we have. There's one company that was coming here that was, 2 or 3 have actually not arrived.
But my question is, did we recruit anybody?
Well, let's put it this way. Now, don't play mince words with me. I'm saying that it was a real victory.
About mincing words?
No, yeah, right. I'm talking about Caterpillar is a real quest that we succeeded with because
Department of Commerce did
I mean, that was a
Department of
big,
Commerce did that.
well, we worked with them, and our EDC works with them.
Continue to work with them, but I ask you a very simple question. How many have they recruited? Very simple. How many companies have they landed in Lee County?
Well, not very many, but they've maintained well what we have, and they are continuing to look.
Well, we asked them to maintain.
You remember there was a steel company that went south.
Steel company, I don't know.
A Canadian, you're talking about a Canadian
Absolutely,
company that
absolutely.
would come in here and competed
No,
with
no,
another
but we
company.
never even had a public hearing on that.
And then we had another company that is moving out of the county that took a loan from us that we weren't even really sure the collateral was even good on it. I mean,
Well, that was a bummer. It truly
it
was.
was a bummer.
Yeah, but
a
I
lot
mean,
of bummers.
Let me ask the question here, just to make sure I have it right. We're not suggesting we do away with the EDC at this time. We're just saying that we'll move the EDC director under the county manager so we'll have better reporting and better accountability of funding.
Let me clarify the motion, okay? To clarify, I am suggesting that it be retitled economic growth so as not to confuse it with the EDC. That it does not constitute beyond December 31st of this year maintaining the current EDC director. That's a decision to be made downstream. I'm suggesting that it's going to fall under the full authority by December 31st. It will come under the county manager. We'll have a 6-month period to transition the EDC, and then whatever is remaining in the budget of the EDC would transfer under the county manager's direct authority by that time. So we've given 6 months to make the adjustment, work out all the details.
Which we'd have to give to the other contract we had with the city if we were going to cancel one.
I think that's one of the things we should realize here. You're dealing with an independent corporation here.
Right.
It was our contractor.
Right.
So it's not that we're not telling the EDC to go away. You're bringing the economic developer or economic development position under the county manager. The position's already paid out of the county budget. It's already technically a county employee, but it's under the supervision of the EDC board. I think one of the things that I've been here for 4 years. Outside of education, this has been the second biggest issue that we've discussed. I think every year it comes down to there are 3 different ways really to do economic development. That's we've done all 3 in this county. We have contracted with the chamber. We've had economic development as an internal department, and we've had a separate EDC board. If there was one best way to do it, everybody in the state would be doing the same way.
That's right.
But across the state, there are different ways to do it. It really comes down to, once again, what level the board wants to play in the process.
Well, let me just say this. I think that's fair. I mean, that's a fair analogy. Some go this way, some go that way, and some down the middle. My problem is, and I'm being as honest as I know how, I think there is a predisposition on this current Board of Commissioners to minimize economic development opportunities through the incentives that the state promotes and that we as partners gain through that relationship. And I don't want to deny those opportunities. And I'm concerned, and I want you to know why I'm concerned, that I think life will not be the same. I don't think it will necessarily be better. I understand the concept. I have all confidence in Mr. Crumpton. I don't want to take away the sort of spirit and independence of the EDC. Now, if you can assure that will remain, then that's another question. I mean, but it sounds like this is sort of a surprise actually tonight. This is kind of a wholesale, let's change gears altogether. And to me, that's strikingly aggressive and perhaps ill advised, because I don't know that you know any more than I know what is the best way to go. And I have talked with some of you, and we said, if we're going to ratchet this thing up, let's give it a year, give it the time, and put the markers out there that need to be met. But just to bring it in-house, I don't know. I think that's fraught with possibilities that might.
Well, Chairman Hayes, I've been observing this board now very closely for the last year. I'm sorry, did I say that? I apologize. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I'm sorry.
Wow. Thank you.
Gavel me for that. Hayes, I would just offer that I've been watching this board very closely for a year, hanging on every word about economic growth and development. And I got to tell you, I think we've given it a year. And I've personally petitioned to get on that board of directors myself and to get up there. And notwithstanding Mr. Oldham's recent appointment to be the chairman of the board, I think that's a great move. And I look forward to the next 6 months of working with him. But that's not going to change the fact that we've got 4 votes from county appointments on that board, myself included. And there are 8 other votes. And the will of this board cannot be met when we only have 4 of 12 votes. It just doesn't happen. And I can tell you, I've been on the wrong end of an 11-to-1 vote a couple of times where I've been trying to get nudge a change in the board's movement, and it hasn't happened. Now, I'm not saying that Chairman Oldham won't do a much better job. I'm just suggesting that after watching the reports that haven't come in over the last year and watching all of the other activities, I don't know that we'll be any worse off. In fact, I'm sure we won't be any worse off with it coming under the county manager and perhaps the same spirit and maybe a renewed energy about protecting small businesses in Lee County and maybe doing some activity on their behalf instead of just constantly hanging carrots out and trying to attract big companies in here, more industrial base, to create more industrial jobs in Lee County when we're already way over the state metric for industrial jobs.
Well, but these are the kinds of things, though, that I think put to a person like Mr. Oldham, who has come in with fire in the belly, that, are not unreasonable to ask for, especially if it's a redistribution of votes on that board. I mean, I don't know how it's the way it is, but representation with taxation, I mean, that's not unfair. But that's the kind of thing that could be looked at and changed. I don't.
It has been changed. It used to be the opposite, and now it's over time. It's attrited over the last 6 or 8 years. If you look back at the history of the EDC, it used to be in-house here, and then it went to an independent board, and then we lost votes because of the vote of the board of directors. We eventually lost votes. We basically abrogated our responsibilities as a board of commissioners.
Well, but Sanford and Broadway came into it and as a partnership. I mean, they're not. Sanford is a partner, and Broadway, they've all tried to gain in this process.
Well, we gave away money, and then we gave away our authority to oversee that money. That's what we've done, and now we need to rein it back in. And I think we need to be accountable to our taxpayers in that way. If it doesn't work after a year, I'll entertain the opportunity to make it independent again.
Do you recall, Chairman Hayes, is what they're calling you now, so I'm getting in.
I'm sorry. I know that sticks in your throat, Mr. Reeves.
That doesn't bother me at all. I could call you Richard, but I don't. My position is that, as I recall, a couple of years ago, that same board decided on its own that they would not make a recommendation for a company to come in to this community.
That is true.
If
Several, actually, I think.
well, that's even worse.
Well, I mean, they had their reasons, but
They don't know. They represent this body. That's who they're supposed to be, the citizens of Lee County, not deciding which citizens ought to get a job or which citizens shouldn't get a job or an opportunity to get a job.
this is true. This is true.
But then how can you sit here and tell me what a great job they've done over the past years?
I think
Because
they've.
they have not.
I think they've done a great job, and I do recall, just a minute, may I answer? I think the ones that they either did not bring forward or dissuaded or just did not follow through on were reasons that they determined. I'm not defending that, but I'm just saying I was aware of it, that they felt it would be an improper fit for Lee County, and they worked hard at the discussion about should we push this or should we not, and one of them never came back. I mean, it was not exactly, I can't recall, Mr. Crumpton, you may, but one that did not fit the job profile that we were looking for. I think they were California-based and just never came back. They were just...
Whether Amy...
Amy's Kitchen, they just landed
Yeah.
in
Greenville, South Carolina.
Yeah, and they made it. You, as a matter of fact, were asked to go sit with them and find out why we never had an opportunity to even hear about their proposal and their opportunity to come here. Here's the bottom line for me. If you were to hire, and I think this would be accurate, if you hired a person to come in and paint your car, and you said, I would like to have this Carolina blue. And the painter looks at you and says that you've already paid or started to pay. Let me go over and check with your neighbor and see if he likes Carolina blue. Would you keep that person on payroll or would you continue to pay him? The answer is I doubt it very seriously. We're paying a person who comes before this board and takes a position that I don't know if I can answer, I gotta go ask my board. Is that not accurate? In some instances, is that accurate?
Yeah, I think though, yes, I mean, this is not a trap question, yes, but I think it's a very delicate, difficult position sometimes between trying to satisfy you and others on this board and trying to work with his board. Let me just say this on behalf of Mr. Hughes, and I think he's done a lot of good for this county. People that are in that business.
Let's not make it.
No, I know.
We're not talking about individuals and whether they're doing a good
but
job
he's
or
the
not.
executive.
We're talking about the process.
He's the executive
Well,
director.
it doesn't matter what the title is. All we're talking about. That position tells this board that they will go back to their board and decide or ask if they can share information with the board that pays the bill.
But those judgments are appreciated and by the people that are in that business feel that we are well served. I don't know how to say it better than that.
And you agree with that we are.
Well, nothing's perfect.
What? No, this is not perfect, and that's clear. It's not perfect.
I would admit to that.
All that I'm hearing in the motion is that the position be moved under the supervision of the manager
for 6 months.
Well, fine, but over 6 months, there are a lot of things can be worked out. There are a lot of improvements can be made. But the one thing that has to change, in my opinion, is that the reporting of that individual needs to be to this Board of Commissioners.
Let me say a word here to sort of break this up a little bit. Doc Odom, when I first started running for commissioner, asked me a question. He says, what would you do different? Well, I think there needs to be some control. But I think there also needs to be, and Mr. Hayes and I talked about this the other day, I think there also needs to be some research done. What is working well? We compare ourselves to a lot of counties here in North Carolina. I don't see any of them working well. But there's other states that it seems, different organizations seem to be working well. I'm still doing some research, not near completed to my satisfaction. But I think working with the EDC board, working with some businessmen in town, we've got a committee of 100, we've got Small Business Association, we've got Chamber of Commerce. All of these should be more involved in working with our board to say, what is the best thing we do? We still have around 2,400 people unemployed. I don't see them getting any jobs tomorrow. Now, a lot of that doesn't have to do with bringing new businesses in. A lot of it has to do with some other factors in the federal government and economy as a whole. But I'd like to see us bring a group together and brainstorm what would work the best, but do it from a position of having some more complete knowledge and not just bury our heads in the sand. And that's what I'd like to see.
I'm on the same note with you, Charlie. I think, I'm a Presbyterian. We'll form a committee in a minute. And I think we need to form some kind of small committee to do some research on this and see what is the best thing to do. I know some of us are displeased with how the EDC's operate. I haven't been satisfied with some of the things they've done. I've been satisfied with some of the things they've done. But anyway, I think it's something, I'm like Charlie, I think it's something we need to form some kind of little committee and let them study this thing for whatever time it takes and come back to this board with a recommendation.
Madam Chair, I certainly echo that sentiment, except we don't need to form a committee to know that bringing it under the authority of the county manager will be more accountable to this board. I think that's the question here, and I believe that I believe the will of this board is to do that, and I would like to call the question.
Let me ask you a question on that, Chief. Does anyone know what it's going to cost eventually to do that? How many are we going to hire? Eventually hire personnel? Or
I think we've got 6 months to work.
Why would it change?
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Might be a lot cheaper.
Yeah,
Might be a lot cheaper.
Change. Certainly, the idea of it costing us more because we moved the supervision that would scare me.
Yeah.
We're doing something wrong.
I mean, I think Mr. Hughes' salary is somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $130,000 a year. I don't imagine that we're going to hire $100,000.
90.
90, is that what it is? Okay.
It's somewhere around that.
Plus benefits, right?
I think one of the things that we're missing in the equation is, we're not looking at the revenue side. If you're looking at the full EDC budget, we pay 66% of the budget, but you're missing 34% of the budget there. And you don't have a guarantee from the city and the town that they're going to contribute that 34% if we bring it in-house and do it ourselves. That's one of the things that really needs to be worked out over the next 6 months is what service are we going to be providing to the city and the town that they're willing to pay us that 34% for.
Well, as I was reminded a while ago, the city of Sanford and the city of Broadway is part of Lee County.
You betcha. You betcha.
But us paying 66%.
But they also, I look at that a little bit differently. They're a corporation themselves. The town and the city are. And if we're bringing development to their town or to their city, their tax base is going up, and their taxpayers, who are our taxpayers as well, benefit from that.
Talking with Broadway, they've not seen any benefit at all from what they're contributing. So I don't know that they wouldn't like to see something a little better to help them out.
Madam Chair, in the interest of completing this meeting sometime before midnight tonight, I would suggest we call the question because we got a couple more items on the still.
Well, what's the hurry? Robert's got plenty of time.
I told my wife I'd be home in the morning. So.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
What are the nays? Motion
Still
passes.
want to see a committee form and study to see where we need to get.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I would move to reconsider the Johnston Lee Harnett County Community Action request for funding at the level recommended by the county manager, but only contingent upon the contractual obligation that they have to help us land the disability conference in January of next year. That, and again, I would suggest that the county manager can work out the details of this contract, but as with all nonprofits, we require that they contract with the county in order to receive the funding. And in this case, I would make the receipt of that money that the county manager recommended originally contingent upon them helping us land that conference, along with the $25,000 or so that is going to be invested directly either in the Civic Center or for other administrative costs in Lee County, and with all of the, it's a 2-day conference, so it'll have overnights and other motel and restaurant expenses. I think it would be a real lift to the economy here to land a conference. It's the kind of thing that Dr. Marchant's been talking about trying to do. And it looks like that they're the coordinator. JLH is the coordinator for that conference this year. They're the ones that get to select the site. They've petitioned for the grant. If they can land that conference, I suggest that it would be worthy of them receiving the $6,700 or so that the county manager had recommended. So it's a contingent agreement that we fund Johnston Lee Harnett, contingent upon them bringing that conference to.
Question. Yeah. Have they already picked a site?
No. No, in fact, I was at the board meeting last Thursday night, and that's the first I had heard about them being the coordinator for this conference. And I had mentioned to Marie Watson at that time that is it possible that we could get that conference in one of the 3 counties? And she said, well, nowhere in the 3 counties could anyone host a conference like that. And I said, how many people? She said 250. And I said, hello, how about the Dennis A. Wicker Civic Center in Lee County? And she said, well, we didn't know that they could handle that. And I said, absolutely. We would be glad to host that conference. And I know several 3-star hotels in and around that area, that footprint, that would love to have that conference in January. So it's a statewide conference.
So this would be described as an incentive?
This would be described as a contract for service, okay?
Some people call it strong arming.
It's not strong arming. I think it's a fair funding for an organization that would bring to us, under contractual obligation, a major conference. It would be a big lift to this county.
I think Dr. Marshak said something about he would take the lead. And
he certainly did. He offered. And I think we've got the chamber and the Civic Center director already on board with this. If we'll do it.
Sounds like a good deal to me.
You okay with that?
Oh, it's a great incentive.
Yeah.
There you go.
Motion has been made. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, are there any other changes to the budget ordinance?
I see something, is the fees and charges part of the budget, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, I've
We
got
have
some
to
questions.
we have to make the fees part of
Just
that.
mainly questions, not so much motions. Can you tell me why on-site septic application fee should cost $460?
Yeah, that department's not here anymore, but I will say that fee was set the year I started, and there was a bunch of discussion about the increases in fees in environmental health and the amount of time it was taking the environmental health folks to do the work, and also our desire to get environmental health fees to pay for more of the environmental health department. So about the same time.
Well, it may not be the fact that that's what it costs to do it, it's
Revenue.
well,
It's a
yeah,
revenue
but
generator.
you're
But it's kind of pricey.
Yeah, it is. And then to do a reevaluation, what do they have to do a reevaluation that would cost us $300?
That is a trip out to the site, and then with all the paperwork that they have to do to certify.
$300.
Yes, sir.
Okay, it seemed a little steep to me.
It's the number one question I get, right, John? I send you these things.
Yes, ma'am, you do, but you know, these are, the reason there's a fee to begin with is, you know, these are property-specific services that these people are requesting.
I know I had to pay it when I built my house.
So,
I didn't agree with it then, I still don't. I think it's far and above, you know, what we really need to do. I mean, it's one thing to charge a fee that is for the work that they do. It's another thing just to build revenue. And I don't want to see any of our fees just to build revenue. This should be according to what it takes to get the job done. So at some point in time, I'd really like to go over all of these, not now, but that's
Well,
a question I had on the budget.
I think on the environmental health, it'd be good to have Roy Wheeler
Yes.
come in and do it, because he was the one that did the reevaluation of the fees a few years back.
Not at a board meeting, do that at a workshop.
Audit.
I shouldn't do it.
If there are no other changes,
I wouldn't move.
Hold on just a second.
I'm
You
really
need to make any changes?
Yeah, I guess going through this thing on the fire district board, on the fire district subject, and okay, that's outside the budget, right?
It's a separate.
Separate.
Disregard, I'm done with the budget.
okay, or do any individual commissioners have any other changes you want an up or down vote on? Okay, Lisa, give me some direction here.
If you will give me about 5 minutes, I can run out, adjust the ordinance and have it in front of you and go over what changes you have made, make sure it's in line with what.
Take a recess.
Can we
Okay.
go ahead and approve it as changed, or?
I want to see,
Are you gonna take 5 minutes or?
it'll only take her 5 minutes. Do you have the board?
Do you have the budget ordinance for the fire district?
Yes, if you want to go ahead and do the fire district one before I
Jack,
go.
go ahead and hand that to me while you go that way.
You got 10 minutes. We're gonna do boards.
Oh, we're doing the boards.
We're gonna do the boards. She's ready to do the board.
Y'all go ahead and do the boards. I'll hold on to the ordinances.
There's no ties. Might be some ties on there. Oh, she's fixing it.
We took care of that. Okay, I'm here to report the results of the board vacancies we have. The ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Board, had 4 vacancies. We only received 1 application. So Patricia Cameron has been reappointed, and I'll re-advertise for those other vacancies. Airport Authority was 1 vacancy. Doug Wilkinson Jr. has been appointed. It's just the 1 application received. The Agricultural Advisory Board, there's 2 vacancies, 1 in the Pocket District and 1 in East Sanford, and I did not receive any applications at all for that. The Sanford Board of Adjustments has 2 vacancies, received 1 application. Paul Kelly has been reappointed. Central Carolina Community College Board of Trustees, 1 vacancy. Susan Ladati has been appointed. Economic Development, 1 vacancy. Alan Holt has been selected for that board. Environmental Affairs Board, 2 vacancies, only received 1 application. David Sylvie has been appointed to that one. Fire Advisory Board, 2 vacancies. I received 3 applications. The 2 that have been selected are Guy Richard Holzhauser. Does he go by Guy or Richard? Richard. Okay. And Gary Gillum. Board of Health is 3 vacancies. 1 RN position, 1 veterinarian, and 1 engineer. Linda Kelly has been reappointed in the RN position, Dr. Scaller for the veterinarian, and Martha Underwood in the engineering position. Juvenile Crime Prevention Council was 1 vacancy, 1 application received, and that was Brenda Williams. Jury Commission was 1 vacancy with 2 applications received, and Harold York was reappointed. Parks and Recreation Commission, I have 4 vacancies, James Emerson and Harry Strifler, is that his name? Strifler, excuse me. And Jamie Norton, the first alternate was moved up, so those are the 3 that have been there, so there's still 1 vacancy. The Lee County Planning Board has 4 vacancies. Full-time members will be Elizabeth Kovaskic and Joe Johnson. Mr. Johnson was an alternate that has been moved up. The alternates would be Dal Eakes and Martha Lucas. Rest Home and Nursing Home Advisory Board, there's 9 vacancies. I received 5 applications. Those are Mary Bristow, Evelyn Bullard, Carol Bates, William Bates, and Lynn Green. Social Services Board was 1 vacancy with 2 applications, and Paul Utley has been reappointed. And the Transportation Advisory Board, 1 vacancy with Robert McCarthy being reappointed to that one. So the boards that I still have vacancies on, I'll re-advertise and hopefully bring those back in July.
I have a question.
You've been doing a good job of recruiting, so keep doing it.
Will you use alternates and push them up where we have big gaps? In other words, I made the suggestion today just over email. I thought that where we have alternates and yet we don't have enough names to fill new positions, would we not naturally say alternates, you move up?
Not naturally, no, that's up to you, and not all boards have alternates.
Well, but
No,
not
where
only
we do have
that,
them.
that's up to the individual. Some people want to serve as alternate, not full-time board members.
Well, should we invite them?
Are there any
Yeah, you can do
alternates that
that.
didn't move up? I know we moved a lot.
I don't know, I was just
No, there's
thinking in
not any.
general.
I think they were invited, actually, when they were invited, because everyone has to reapply, right? And so
If your
an
term is
alternate,
up.
if they really wanted to serve and were really following it closely, they would have already renominated themselves to move up.
Maybe, maybe not. I just would say to us that if there are willing alternates who are ready now, because there are not people to fill some positions, it might make our job simpler.
But Mr. Hayes, what I'm saying is the boards that still have vacancies do not have alternate
Okay.
positions,
Well,
period.
that's-
So there's no
that's-
one there to move
I
up from an
understand.
alternate to a full-time
Very good.
position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gaynell. Can we consider the fire department budget ordinance now while we're waiting?
Yes, ma'am, it's coming your way. The revised ordinance covers the Clearwater Fire Service District, and that's really the only, and that is the change in the Deep River amounts are the only differences between the ordinance you have in your packet and what we're sending out now.
I just have one question, John.
Yes, sir.
The fire marshal.
Yes, sir.
It seems like each one of these sections, we have a certain amount for the fire marshal.
Yes, sir.
Why?
We charge the fire marshal's office to each district so that the fire tax pays for the fire
So
marshal's
what
office.
happens to all that money? I mean, you're not paying a salary from that.
I'm paying the fire marshal's salary, yes, sir.
It's operating budget.
So he gets 45,000, 15,000, 70,000.
The office. It's not just salary.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I want to know what it's.
He's out there voting for that, Charlie.
The fire tax pays for half of Shane's salary, and then it pays for all of the deputy and all of,
Half of Nancy's, the deputy fire marshal, fire inspector,
Fire
and
inspector.
office.
Okay, yeah, I just hadn't seen it quite listed like that, so I had a concern there that Shane was making $1 million off of us.
I'll take it.
Plus you pay for workman's comp for everybody, it's some other big expenses there,
Yes,
so.
ma'am.
Okay, that answered my question.
Okay.
I heard a motion down here.
Okay. Move to approve has been made. The motion to approve has been made. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Okay, that one's done. And consider support of service area of foreign trade zones. Is that something that has to be renewed every year, John?
no, ma'am, this is something new. We are not part of the foreign trade zone for the FTZ number 93, which is actually administered by the Triangle J Council of Governments. What Triangle J has asked us to do is to give them a letter of support asking that Lee County be included in the free trade zone. Free trade zones help with rates, tariffs, and legal review issues that help foreign companies do business in the country. It's something that's actually very attractive to them. When I was in Scotland County, we tried to get our airport industrial site as a FTZ, actually with Triangle J, but we weren't allowed to do it. We couldn't do it because really of the expense. There's a one-time offer from the federal government to expand your FTZ, and it's really a way to enhance economic development in these areas. And for us, since there's no cost involved, but there's a big help in economic development and recruitment, we're recommending that we go ahead and give them a letter of support and that we be included. I don't see any detriment to the county in doing this. I see nothing but positive that can come from it. And it's,
I thought we were already in it because when I went to my very first Triangle J meeting, the gal who's in charge of all of this free trade zones said that we had a couple of companies in Lee County, I think Pfizer was one of them, and somebody else who are already participating in the free trade zone.
that's why they have offices in the Research Triangle Park. So
Yeah,
some of those folks, some of the folks that may have an office here have an office up there, and that's where they run, that, certain things through there to take advantage of it. Now they wouldn't have to do that. They could be located here.
You said there's no cost. In other words, they're going to waive the application fee, but after the first year's application fee, is there no cost after that?
They're not saying that there is.
Madam Chair, the only caution that I have here is that when you agree to join or join into a cooperative arrangement like this, you may find yourself being subject to federal encroachment at some point where they may say, because of this free trade agreement we've got with such and such, that the tax dollars, this is tax exempt or whatever in a certain area. I would just say let's move forward with caution, express the interest, but let's make sure we've done our homework, that we're not going to waive future tax dollars in this county from development that's done here because of some international agreement that the federal government has entered into.
This would not, as I understand it, would not affect property taxes that they would pay to the county. But I'll make sure of that.
Yeah, my support of this would be conditional on that we're not waiving any future collections of property taxes in this county or sales taxes in this county as a result of entering into this agreement. Otherwise, it's not much better than some of the incentive agreements that we've run into in the past.
And we'll do, the meeting on July 15th, we'll be there for that.
Okay. So really, all we're doing is authorizing you to complete a sample letter of interest. We're not bound, that we can still get more information to make sure our concerns are about giving up tax revenue. Okay.
Do we need a motion?
Yes, we need a motion.
Madam Chair, I so move that we accept it.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes. Lisa, are you ready for us?
I'm just curious, did we throw you any ringers tonight? No, she's too good. We'll have to try harder next year.
A couple of the things that y'all suggested, like the EDC, we don't have to do that at budget. If there's a net effect there, we don't have to make that change, or we don't have, doing the RFP for the audit services, we'll make those changes when we actually vote with the contract and that kind of stuff. So
bottom line is, if we can do all this without raising taxes.
That's right.
The changes
We're
from
trying.
the original ordinance that you had would be that we added on page 2, Johnston Hornet Lee Community Action at $6,720. Now, I have not built in the contingency in here because based on the agreement that you have for nonprofits, they have to sign off on a contract before I will start making the appropriations to them for the next fiscal year. So I will be working with Mr. Hull and Mr. Talbert over the next few weeks to try to get contracts drawn and sent out to them, and then whether or not they sign them or not will determine whether or not we start those appropriations. Also on page 2, we added Temple Theater for $6,000, which brings our total appropriations for 2011-12 to $62,689,722. On page 3, the fund balance appropriated has increased to $3,319,880, bringing total revenues to $62,689,722 for the fiscal year 2011-12. The other change, I want to make sure you did see, is on page 8. We added section 24 from the ordinance to the ordinance that was originally in your budget package, and that refers to the interlocal agreement with the schools. And again, I will not start that appropriation to them until we have that signed interlocal agreement. I will hold off on that until we do that, and however many months are left in the year once that agreement is signed, we will spread it over that many months if the board so approves.
So I guess the performance audit, did we have to build something in here? That'll just come, how will we deal with that?
I'll be bringing it back to the board.
Okay.
Ms. Bender,
I think it was an agreement that we would approve the RFP before it went out.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'll be bringing the RFP back to the board.
Okay.
just to make sure I'm reading section 24 correctly, it says, if at any time during the fiscal years ending June 30th, 2012 or June 30th, 2013, the state reestablishes funding for these items, the BOE will refund these funds to the county. You're referring to these items being the ambassador program and the tutors, right? You're not referring to the teacher's assistants.
The discretionary funding that is being used to fund those teacher assistants, because yes, their state budget has already allocated money for teachers' assistants, but they have been, my understanding is, they've been using discretionary funding that has also been cut to fund teacher assistants.
No, but see, that's not, that wouldn't be correct technically, because the teachers' assistants are fully funded K through 3, K1 through K3 currently, and they're not, and they've been cut. They've been fully funded. So to restore funding, that would mean that technically they've got to give us the 100,000 back immediately, because they've been funded in the state in the state budget bill.
It actually, they'd be given the 400,000 back.
Given the 400,000 back. So technically, we're saying they got to give it back anyway because it's been fully funded by the state. So I think what we may have to do here is make an adjustment. I will support this agreement, but we need to make an adjustment to call out that, because I don't think that Dr. Moss at all meant to agree that if teachers' assistants are funded at the state level. But see, he gave away the third grade level teachers' assistants a year or two ago. And we can't recover those because that was a deal that was made a while back. So, yeah, so we need to make that adjustment. I mean, I don't care how you do it, as long as it's clear that that does not include teachers' assistants. Otherwise, they owe us the money back.
Is this something that you could
work out in the contract?
Yep. Anybody have any questions?
I move we accept the ordinance.
Okay, so motion has been made to approve the budget ordinance as we amended it tonight. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Thank you so much, Lisa and John, both of you, for all the work that you've done on this.
I came prepared.
Have another one.
Okay, Lisa.
Okay. John is passing out the budget amendment, which I did not bring up here with me. I thought I came prepared.
There you go.
I did have a financial report. I'll go ahead and talk to you about the financial report while the budget amendment is coming around. You have in your package the financial report through May 30th, 2011. As you can see, our tax revenue is at 102, almost 103% budget, and we were just a little bit ahead of that this time frame last year. Interest income, it's tanked. There's no other way to put it. I don't see it coming back anytime soon, so we have adjusted next year's budget accordingly. In reviewing expenditures, our target is 91.67%. The only budget that is over that at this point in time is the Sheriff's Department, and I'm still attributing that to the tornado relief expense. You have done a budget amendment earlier, well, you're doing one in just a minute, to allocate additional funds for the tornado relief that will help us get that department out of budget, okay, or out of the hole. In addition, you'll see here, as I promised you last month when the question came up, we have made some incentive payments in the month of May, and those are listed here, and the amounts. We made a payment to Wyeth, Caterpillar, Challenge Printing, Lee Brick and Tile, and Pentair, and I did review the tax payments with Mr. Hughes and with Mr. Brinson to verify that they were in compliance with what the agreements had stated, and that taxes had been paid accordingly, and if the payments needed to be adjusted, they were adjusted to the appropriate amounts. Okay, I'll be glad to answer any questions on those. Otherwise, I'll move on to sales tax. As you can see on the sales tax analysis, we are pretty much in line with our budget and pretty much in line with our projections that we've used in the budget for this year that we would receive. So it still fluctuates from month to month, so I get a little antsy when I see the numbers, but overall we're still looking in pretty good shape on sales tax. Any questions? Okay.
Any areas that send any flags up that you?
You know, the biggest flag we've had all year is investment income, and we're trying to be as aggressive as we can be. First Citizens is paying us very well on our checking account compared to anything else we can get. So I am leaving more in our general checking account than what I normally would. Normally, we would pull out more and put it in CDs, but when I can make more on my checking account than I can on a CD, I'm going to leave it in our checking account. We do have a very conservative policy on our investments in line with the
At least
state's
we're making
policy.
something. So
Yes,
that's-
sir, we are. And
Okay.
we're watching our state funding, hoping that everything comes in. We are seeing some delays in it, but, we will book receivables for that for the fiscal year. So, if no other questions on that, you have a budget amendment that Mr. Crumpton just passed around for me. This is just basically additional cleanup for some things that we just could not verify numbers on prior to the agenda cutoff. We have reviewed salaries and wages for departments that were involved in the tornado relief and are having to book additional funds there to cover overtime. We're hoping that we've done enough. It's kind of hard. The Sheriff's Department is still working security in those areas. So we have at least this payroll, and then we'll have to book an accrued payroll for 90% of the first payroll in July. So we're hoping that this will cover that.
What happens to recovery money?
The
From
tornado
FEMA?
relief,
Yeah.
it will come back in and go back to the general fund or to solid waste for the solid waste
Okay.
expenses.
All right.
And I will be booking a receivable for that, and we are meeting with them again Thursday to submit our preliminary filing for the tornado relief that went through the general fund. They have already submitted the filing for the storm debris removal. And this also increases that amount. We wanted to make sure that we had enough in the budget this year in case the bills came on in or the work was completed prior to June 30th.
Is there some justification why we're still doing security?
Yes, sir. Just this past week, the sheriff's deputies over in St. Andrews caught one contractor stealing from another.
They're also still having issues with copper being stolen and
Yeah, this copper
sheet
problem
metal,
is still-
or scrap metal, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I asked the same question, Mr. Parks, to the sheriff, and that's what he told me, so I said, all right.
Okay.
I asked the same question.
Any other questions? I need a motion to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you very much.
Lisa, thank you again.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent job all throughout the budget cycle.
Thank
Appreciate that.
Madam Chair, I do have a couple items I just want to discuss with the
Okay.
board real quick to bring some clarifications to a couple things that involve the budget. With the position add backs that we've done, we're down to really only rifting 3 positions within the budget. What I'm going to do with the board's approval is not send those employees RIF letters until I talk with them. We have positions opening and that have opened through natural attrition. Going to try to find out if they're interested in those other positions, and with your approval, go ahead and advertise or allow department heads to start moving towards hiring people where the positions have been frozen up until June 30th. So since the next meeting occurs after July 1st, the freeze was only to June 30th. I just want to let you know that we would be doing some advertising for some positions that are coming open. But before we do that, we're going to give the RIFT employees the opportunity for those open positions. And if it works out, we may not even RIFT anybody.
That's good.
So the attrition wasn't in place by the time I presented the budget, but now that the attrition is starting to catch up with us, and I think we'll work out all right. Other than that, I think that's it for me tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I move we retire. Adjourn.
Does anybody have any commissioner comments? I think we're all commented out. But I do want to say, do we want to?
I want to form a committee to cut down on these night meetings.
Well, that was my next question.
I'll be that person.
Do we on July 18th want to change to a 3 o'clock meeting?
I want to change every meeting.
I'm like, just cut it shorter.
Well, I don't know if we'll have very many people for that public hearing or on the commissioner districts or not.
We'll also have a joint meeting with the planning board on the 18th.
So does that mean we need to keep it at 6?
Yeah. Well, what you could do is go ahead and start the business meeting at 3 and just reconvene at 6 o'clock for the public hearing and the joint meeting with the planning board, and that way we have leave
But then you're gonna have a big gap where people that are traveling in are gonna have to sit around for an hour or two, because it's gonna be short, well, I don't know, June,
Yeah, I don't
July
stay
18th.
up
not be-
late any
Why don't
more
you
than
try it
anybody
first?
else,
Well, try it.
however.
Yeah.
Well, whatever you wanna do.
Well, we're gonna have some probably lengthy discussion on animal control.
That's true. We may have public comments and go a couple hours.
On animal control.
Yeah, I want that to be a state meeting. I don't want to folk out here at night.
Well, let's do that.
Okay, I think well, everybody okay with foregoing commissioner comments? I think we're commenting out, so I had a motion to adjourn.
Yes, ma'am.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody, for this.
Okay,
Thank you.
Just getting warmed up. Just getting warmed up.
Fine, break.